want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well.
Hello.
I'm a double.
Turks, Cenk Anna Kasparian with you guys. Is it the online news show? I believe it is. So do we have
guess.
Amazing show for you guys, of course. So we're gonna break down the ICE shooting further. Turns out she's not what people thought she was, but in a good way. There's a lot of bad news about reactions to it, so we'll get to that. But later in the program, Megyn Kelly's totally flipped. And yesterday we shared an amazing part of a video with you guys where she was calling out her former employer Fox News for basically doing propaganda and kind of giving the inside scoop on it. Today, another amazing Megyn Kelly video where she begins to defend Muslims because she realizes that she's been the victim of propaganda. What is going on in this country? So as we have horrible news, we also have like fascinatingly optimistic news at the same time. So let's give them both to you.
Absolutely. Another white pill. I just happened to catch a live broadcast by Owen Schroyer, who used to be Alex Jones's co-host, if I'm not mistaken, but he definitely worked at InfoWars. He ended up leaving because he felt that they were essentially providing cover for the Trump administration's failures. And I was really surprised to hear his response to the ICE shooting. Seemed to be pretty critical of the Trump administration's handling of it. So there are some white pills out there if you're looking for them. So we'll try to, balance out the negative news with some of the positives. But let's get started with this update on the ICE shooting that took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota yesterday.
President Trump says, claims online that Good violently, willfully, and viciously, this is a quote from him, ran over the ICE officer, adding that it is hard to believe he is alive.
We went through video of Wednesday's deadly shooting frame by frame with retired ICE agent Eric Ballier.
She's trying to get around that vehicle, is what it appears to me. She has the steering wheel turned to the right, and she's trying to get away. Someone is fleeing. That is not a justification for the use of deadly force.
Well, President Donald Trump has been pressed on his rather callous and I would even argue idiotic response and reaction to the fatal ICE shooting of Renee Nicole Good in Minneapolis, Minnesota yesterday. But he did change his, did he change his tune? That's a better question. Did he change his tune after he was confronted with the facts and footage of the incident? Before we tell you, Cenk, I'm curious, your 2 cents. Has anything changed in your mind since yesterday?
No, things have only gotten worse, in my opinion, for that ICE officer and the folks that are enthusiastically backing him. But let's go through what is definitively true, what is in dispute, and then draw our conclusions from that. And as you know, this has become a Rorschach test. So people are seeing what they want to see, but there is an actual reality, and it is on tape, and there are laws in this country. So let's break down the facts and see what conclusions we all reach together.
So President Trump sat down for a wide-ranging 3-hour-long interview with the New York Times, and this topic, of course, came up. How could it not come up? And so he was asked about ICE's fatal shooting of an American citizen. He once again told the reporters that the woman, Renee Nicole Good, was at fault. Okay, the journalist asked him if, in his mind, firing into a vehicle like that was acceptable, to which he responded, "She behaved horribly, and then she ran him over. She didn't try to run him over, she ran him over." which is just not based in reality. Okay, I don't care where you stand politically. You can't watch that video and argue that she ran a person over. She didn't do that. So when the reporter said the videos of the shooting didn't confirm what he was claiming, he asked his aide, Natalie Harp, to pull up the video right then and there, which I'm glad he did. And then he says, well, Trump said, the way I look at it, it's a terrible scene, he said at the end of the video. I think it's horrible to watch. No, I hate to see it. So he didn't exactly backtrack or double down on the original claim after he actually watched the video. And when asked if his administration's anti-immigration tactics had gone too far, Trump actually just entirely sidestepped the question and instead pivoted to condemning the Biden administration's handling of the border and immigration overall. So before we get to some of the analysis of the video, some of the evidence that I think is worthy of looking at, any thoughts on Trump's reaction, Cenk?
Yeah, look, there's two different schools of thought here among the right that are supporting the officer. One school of thought is, yeah, his life wasn't in danger and he didn't get run over by the van and etc. But you know what? She was doing the wrong thing. She shouldn't have been there. You shouldn't interfere with law enforcement. And you F around and you're gonna find out and they're gonna murder you. Okay, they're gonna kill you, okay? No, I don't love that reaction, okay? But then there's another reaction, and then that's driven by their ideology, but at least they're somewhat on planet Earth. Then there's the reaction of, no, he was within an inch of his life. He was about to be murdered. And she smashed over him, and his life flashed before his, come on, guys, come on. He walked around afterwards, we saw it on video. So is he mortally injured? Of course not. I guess you can dispute whether his life was in danger, but look at the video. It's not even close. She's turning away. He could just step aside. And in fact, he does step aside as he's shooting her to death. And Anna, the last two shots are indisputable. They're from the side. You literally have to be blind not to see that he didn't have to shoot her in the head from the side.
Well, I agree with you entirely on that. And that's the evidence that I want to go through, right? So everything was happening and moving quickly yesterday. We have a little more time to actually process video and images. And here's another look at it where you can see that the victim here, she's driving away while the shots are being fired. So you see 3 still frames, and undeniably, in the third frame especially, you can see the officer clearly shooting at her as he is at the side of the car, not in front of the car. So on top of that, the video shows the agent who shot Renee walking around the scene for more than a minute after her car crashes into a pole. And I think that's relevant information as Trump administration officials, whether we're talking about DHS spokespeople or Kristi Noem saying that this was terrorism. This poor ICE agent was brutally injured and had to go to the hospital. Take a look at this video and you tell me what type of injuries we're talking about here.
The federal agents on scene do not appear to rush to provide emergency medical care. Eventually, the agent who shot the motorist approaches the vehicle. Seconds later, he turns back around and tells his colleagues to call 911.
Shame! So he allegedly did go to the hospital, but he must have driven himself because you do see video of him entering his own vehicle and driving off, which, by the way, I could be wrong about this, but aren't you supposed to stay on the scene and administer aid? Why are you getting in your vehicle and driving away? And could that potentially be a crime? I don't know for sure, but these are questions that should be raised. Then for more than a minute, this guy's walking around seemingly unscathed. I mean, you can see it for yourselves. And yet you do have people like Kristi Noem saying things like this.
Secretary, can you expand too on the agent's injuries? The president said that he's lucky to be alive.
The officer was hit by the vehicle. She hit him. He went to the hospital. A doctor did treat him. He has been released, but he's going to spend some time with his family.
From every video that I've seen, I have yet to confirm that he actually got hit by the vehicle. I'm not going to take Kristi Noem's word for it. I'm not saying that he didn't get hit to some extent. I just haven't seen any evidence of that, and I'm open to viewing that evidence if anyone wants to send that to me. But the exaggeration of the injuries, and I'm pretty sure, his decision to go to the hospital had more to do with covering his own ass. I'm sure he was probably talking to his lawyer, who told him, you better head over to the hospital.
100%.
Yeah. That's my theory. That's not confirmed, but that is my theory. Now, interestingly, there's someone in the Trump administration who hasn't been willing to embrace DHS's account of the shooting, and that's anti-immigrant ideologue and border czar Tom Homan. Asked about Kristi Noem's statements and DHS's assessment immediately after the shooting, and that this was all an act of domestic terrorism. Here's what Homan had to say.
I'm not going to comment on it. This is an ongoing investigation.
You say you can't comment on the video, which many Americans are seeing and reacting to.
I'm not going to make a judgment call on one video when there's 100 videos out there. I wasn't on the scene. I'm not an officer that may have body cam video. It'd be unprofessional to comment on what I think happened in that situation. Let the investigation play out. And hold people accountable based on the investigation.
I think many members of the public are calling for the same thing, and so they're confused. Maybe you can help me understand how the Department of Homeland Security could conclude so swiftly that this is a, quote, act of domestic terrorism, that this woman, quote, weaponized her vehicle. By the very same standard you describe, this investigation is just getting started.
That's a question for Homeland Security. I'm the border czar.
Look, I don't have warm and fuzzy feelings toward Tom Homan. Let me just be very clear about that. However, the reaction that we got from Homan is the reaction that I wish we got from our leader. That's the kind of reaction I wish we got from the president. Instead, he decided to throw gasoline on that fire. And he never ceases to take advantage of every opportunity possible to increase tensions in this country. In the case of Tom Homan, there are potentially some conflict with Kristi Noem reasons for why he reacted the way he did. I don't know. And honestly, I don't care what his motivations were. What I do care about is that he gave the right response. Cenk, what do you think?
Yeah, look, more things we know and don't know. So we're going to talk more about this later, but JD Vance called her a deranged leftist. We don't know anything about her yet. Okay, in fact, it turns out they were like, oh, she's an anti-ICE person. That's apparently not necessarily true at all. Her ex-husband and her mom says, what are you guys talking about? Legal observer. No, she's not a lawyer. And they say she was just dropping off her son. So Kristi Noem, she says immediately, right away, doesn't know a thing about her. She's a domestic terrorist. Come on, guys. No, sorry. Look, I'm trying to not be insulting, but you really got to be mental to think that she's a domestic terrorist, a 37-year-old mom with 3 kids. Look, not that this should matter, but described as a good Christian, etc., family person. You can go on and on.
A devout Christian, by the way.
Yeah. So what is this? Come on, this is not domestic terrorism, etc. And so, and one thing, Anna, we should be able to agree on, but we can't even get this bare minimum. It's a tragedy. Like this is not a thing to celebrate. And so,
Can I just jump in on that, Cenk? Because like the pain that I'm personally feeling about all of this, aside from the fact that there was a loss of life here, she was a human being, and now her children will be without a mother, is the fact that after federal agents gun you down, our government that we pay taxes to, that's supposed to represent us, will immediately smear you and lie about you before they know a damn thing about you. And that is just so painful. Like, we really have to stop and think about the country we're living in right now, and how far our system of government has devolved. And I don't know where it all ends, but we're not in a good place right now.
Again, we don't even know she was protesting ICE. Associated Press reporting the ex-husband and the mom saying no, she was just dropping off her son. There's always a fog in the first 24, 48 hours, so that'll get sorted out. But guys, would it even matter? I remember the days when a 37-year-old mom who was unarmed being killed is a tragedy and something we should all mourn no matter what the political allegiance is, etc. But no, we've lost our humanity. And look, guys, so in this case, it's the right wing. The right wing said during the Charlie Kirk thing that a bunch of left wingers celebrated his death. And yes, that did happen. Was it the entire left? Absolutely not. And by the way, to be fair to the right, in this case, it is a big number. And I tell you guys all the time when it's not a big number, when MAGA's split, and they're not overly split on this one. It's a big number, but it's not all of the right, it's not all Trump voters, etc. But either way, we're both sides, way too many people on both sides are looking at things in such a partisan light that they can't see that someone being shot in the head or the neck, no matter what their political affiliation is a tragedy. It's a tragedy, not something you celebrate. And by the way, it is definitely not manly to celebrate an unarmed woman getting shot in the head.
And let me just say, I think that you and I are pretty consistent on this, right? You and I did not make light of what happened to Charlie Kirk. We didn't celebrate it. In fact, I not only condemned it, but got into a shouting match with Destiny on Piers Morgan's show about it. And so, if we keep going in the direction that we're going in, where we dehumanize each other based on political views, this country's not going to survive. It's over. And so we're at this junction where we really have to ask ourselves, which direction do we want to go in? Because the direction that we've been barreling toward is the world of dehumanization, tyrannical government, increased government power, and state-sponsored violence. And I don't think that's okay. That's not what our country is supposed to stand for. And increasingly, it feels that that's where we're at.
Yeah, last two things here. Look, the two tragedies happening here overall, the meta tragedies are, look, with Charlie, for example, I got some heat from the left for mourning him. I didn't just say, oh, it's bad or whatever. No, he's got kids. He was needlessly killed. Charlie did say terrible things, including about my background, etc. But that doesn't, guys, that's a million miles from violence and shooting someone in the neck. And so we can't let these political differences dehumanize us so that we don't mourn young people needlessly getting killed. On either side, we gotta bring that down. So that's number one problem here in America, that we're starting to see it from such a political lens that some are beginning to not mind violence as long as it happens to the other side. And Anna's right, then we can't be a united country, and I desperately want us to be a united country. And then the second part of it is we're beginning to lose our common perception of reality.
Yes.
Now we're looking at things from such a political bias that we literally can't see straight, right? So in this case, there's disagreement about whether she hit him at all, right? And I watched the video countless times. I can't tell if she nicks him as she's turning, right? She's definitely turning away from him. And he's in the front for no reason. He moves to the side. Does she nick him at that point? I can't tell. But if you're on the right, oh, she definitely hit him and she nearly murdered him. He escaped within an inch of his life, right? If you're on the left, she was nowhere near him. He just started shooting for no reason. No, guys, no, and that's not a fair description of everyone on the left or the right, but certainly the extremes. So, and then the second one, was his life in danger? So, but that one, okay, yeah. So people on the right, a lot of them say his life was in mortal danger and they won't move off that position. And I don't see it at all, at all. And I don't know, Anna, this is, again, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
I have to give you a perfect example of what we're trying to talk about and condemn here. Matt Walsh, I mean, loves to flaunt his devout religious beliefs. he's a good Christian man. But when it comes to human lives or the human lives of people that he, doesn't agree with politically, who cares? And why is it at all relevant that she's allegedly a lesbian agitator? This is what he wrote on X. This lesbian agitator gave her life to protect 68 IQ Somali scammers who couldn't give less of a crap about her, the most disgraceful and humiliating end a person could possibly meet. Please don't talk to me ever about how you believe in abortion bans because you value human life, you scumbag. Absolute scumbag. By the way, as she's bleeding out, there's a physician on the scene who wanted to administer aid, and the ICE agents blocked that physician from being able to do so.
No, that should be absolutely positively criminal. And I've seen that happen way too often. And so, in the old days when we covered it, and it happened a great majority of the time to African Americans, people would, on the right, et cetera, would say, oh, it happens to white people too. And we agreed. And we would show you the videos, the poor white guy in the hotel hallway getting killed by a cop for no reason at all when he's completely unarmed, et cetera. So now we have a white woman being killed. And now the people who are worried about the jackbooted thugs of the government and federal tyranny and don't tread on me are like, oh, she might or might not have nicked him. He's 100% fine. But of course he should have murdered her, but shot her in the head 3 times. Of course. No, and last thing, I'm trying so hard not to get both sides even more agitated. But guys, if you're on the right, that is not a strong position to say that you also would have been so scared in that situation, so absolutely frightened that, oh my God, it's a 30, oh, she nicked me slightly as I was moving to the side. So bang, 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 I executed her. That is not a manly position. That is not a strong position. Sorry, it isn't. By definition, it isn't. I would have moved out of the way, and if you say no way, no person could have moved out of the way, he moved out of the way. It was super easy to move out of the way. I would have moved out of the way instead of executing her. And I hope to God, I really, really hope that almost everyone watching would have had the decency to move out of the way instead of executing her.
We got to take a break. When we come back, I do want to show a video from Vice President JD Vance's press conference where he addresses this. It's worth a watch. And we'll get to other news, including Tucker Carlson's thoughts on the fatal shooting of a Minnesota woman at the hands of ICE. We'll be right back.
Let's go to our members on TYT.com. Bloated Ego says, it's too bad we can't swear people in before the press conferences like in court. If we could, this administration would be guilty of perjury many times over. It's true, but on the other hand, no one would prosecute it. And if they were found guilty, the prosecutor found guilty, Trump would pardon. Otherwise, of course, he'd be up for thousands of perjury charges. Art Guy says, remember in 2016 when Marianne Williamson said there was a dark psychic force spreading throughout US politics? People laughed at her phrasing, but it kind of feels like she was right. And also a witch, the good kind, he says. Okay, all right. It's an interesting observation. I like to shout out for Marianne. Wang Jun says, when we all said Happy New Year, we didn't mean 1984. As usual, on point. Kofefe says, have they determined the kill shot 1, 2, or 3? I have to imagine that will be important. I think that is going to be, whether we think it's right or wrong, morally right or wrong, that'll probably be very, very important in the trial. But as far as I can see for now, no, they have not determined that. And they haven't determined anything yet. There's just two sides yelling at each other based on the video we've all seen, and they're not providing any extra information. They're just going 100% with bias, right? And so, and by the way, ICE investigating itself will be an utter joke. That is a potential homicide in Minnesota. Our laws normally have the state prosecute local crimes like that if it's a crime. But I don't know that they're going to let Minnesota do that. So, and here I'll spoil the beans for you. Okay, ICE is going to find that he was not only not guilty, but he was a hero, and they might even give him a medal. And I'm not joking at all. But one thing is, I mean, we'll talk about it more later, but I get the sense that the initial reaction was horrific, but the country's beginning to move a little bit and going, oh, and I think there's a big, honestly, her being a white woman, Christian, etc., 37, the orphan kids, it makes a big difference. And so I wish that everybody would be treated equally, but anyways, we'll talk more about that in a minute. Cenk's left tricep or fury said, thank God everyone has cell phone cameras now. Can you imagine the framing of it if it wasn't captured on video? Even eyewitnesses would have been shunned and called liars. Oh, 1,000,000,000%. Oh, that's such a great point. Thank God for Steve Jobs' Syrian father. Okay, no, seriously, the smartphones have made all the difference. I guarantee you they would have said that she ran him over and he nearly died. I guarantee they would have said that if there was no video. And they would have said all the witnesses are Somalis, which are not true, and liars and dirty Muslims or whatever other insane things they would come up. If you can't tell that the Trump administration is constantly lying, God, you really, I know the bias is so thick. Stiff upper lip says, what gets me is that Vance said that how that agent was dragged by a car 6 months ago, got 33 stitches and probably was a little nervous around cars. Then he continues, then why the hell was he back in the field? Yeah, if you're too nervous to be in law enforcement and you got a trigger finger and you're gonna go around shooting American citizens, then sorry, you shouldn't have that job at all. That's a super dangerous job to have if you're a nervous guy like that. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Also, Patriot has just joined Young Turks, so I love that. So that was on tyt.com/join. Thanks for doing that. We love that. And Gino Boji 3289 joined on YouTube by hitting the join button below. We love that. Melody Loves Music gifted 5 memberships. Rage Rock for Now gifted 10 memberships on YouTube. You guys are absolute American heroes. Thank you for allowing us to do honest, independent programming here at TYT. The other guys who help us do that are Noble Mobile, so they're our sponsor. And in fact, we're kind of doing this together. And cell phone service, if you're paying more than $50, there is literally no need to, absolutely no reason. So nothing changes, your phone doesn't change, your phone number. The cell phone service is honestly from one of the big 3. And so it's super stable. I've had 0 problems with it, and I've saved a ton of money. They give you cash back if you don't use all your data. They gave me back $11 back the first month, $17 back the second month. So I wind up paying in the low 30s every month. And now they've got a new deal. If you sign up, the first month is only $10. So go now, tyt.com/switch. I promise you won't regret it. Anna.
Damn it, you're making it sound so damn good, Cenk.
It is, I did it, I'm telling you. If you're paying over $50, you're a sucker. I think if you're paying over $40, you're a bit of a sucker. I guarantee you, because we all use the phone on the Wi-Fi, so that's why it doesn't charge our data. So I'm getting a shocking amount of money back every month on top of everything else. You gotta switch.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I'm super lazy with like going through the process of doing it, but you're making it sound too good, and I think I'm gonna have to do it.
Yeah. I mean, 5 to 10 minutes saves you hundreds of dollars every year. So, okay.
Yeah. All right, well, we got to talk a little more about this fatal ICE shooting and how the federal government is responding to it. So let's talk a little bit about Vice President J.D. Vance. Vice President J.D. Vance was a bit combative during a press conference today where he was asked about the fatal ICE shooting that just took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So here he is talking about how the press is at fault for their coverage of the shooting. Let's take a look.
When I was actually walking out here, somebody sent me a photo of a CNN headline about what happened in Minneapolis. And this is the headline, I'm just gonna read it. Outrage after ICE officer kills US citizen in Minneapolis. Well, that's one way to put it, and that is the way that many people in the corporate media have put this attack over the last 24 hours. And I say attack very, very intentionally, because this was an attack on federal law enforcement. This was an attack on law and order. This was an attack on the American people. The way that the media, by and large, has reported this story has been an absolute disgrace, and it puts our law enforcement officers at risk every single day.
No, you're the disgrace. For all the criticism that we've had for CNN and the way that they write headlines, that headline was accurate. That's literally what happened. You know what wasn't accurate? The federal government's claims that the 37-year-old Christian woman with children is a domestic terrorist. Could that maybe encourage individuals who are fearful of domestic terrorism to engage in violence? I don't know. Maybe JD Vance should ask himself that. Disgusting. Anyway, the fact that he is focusing on CNN after a federal agent, we've got militarized feds roaming the streets in cities across the country. Okay, and this isn't the first instance of violence that's been carried out. Okay, we've gone over other instances, including one in which a woman was shot 5 to 7 times. ICE claimed that she rammed them with her car. Video evidence proved otherwise. They ended up dropping charges against her, by the way. And she was able to provide evidence through her lawyer showing the ICE agent celebrating, the ICE agent who shot her celebrating that he had opened fire on her. I mean, it's just, are we okay with this? Are we okay with state-sponsored violence against American citizens or against anyone who's in the country, really? And then after that state-sponsored violence happens, the victim gets smeared by the federal government, by our so-called public servants, whose salaries are paid for through US taxpayers, whose healthcare benefits are provided through American taxpayers. It's disgusting.
Yeah. So you remember when there was that hilarious and ironic sign back during the Obamacare debate when conservatives put up the sign, "Get your government hands off my Social Security and Medicare." Those are government-run programs, right? I'm waiting for a sign at one of these pro-ICE events where they're like, "Tread on me, please tread on me." Like these for maybe getting nicked a tiny bit because he didn't move out of the way. You think a jackbooted government officer should shoot an unarmed lady 3 times in the head? I mean, we might as well make the sign, "Tread on me." You just saw Vance there saying she was targeting all of law enforcement.
Right.
Really? That lady, that 37-year-old mom, was about to murder all law enforcement in the country? Come on, man. Is there no bounds to your exaggeration? So look, I get it. There's a portion of MAGA, I don't know what the percentage is, 25, 30, 50, I don't know what the number is. But there's a percentage that thinks that in Ohio, immigrants eat cats and dogs, and they're just, right? So those guys, you're never gonna convince them of anything. They're not gonna listen to you, their mind is completely shut. But there's a giant chunk of Trump voters that don't believe that. For those guys, come on. Did she, domestic terrorist? She was trying to harm all of law enforcement. Are there no bounds of reason? So, but as you're gonna see here, there is right-wing voices going in a couple of surprising directions. Some terrible and some decent.
So let's move on to Tucker Carlson, because I hate to say pleasantly surprised at his reaction to the ICE shooting, because we've been seeing so many terrible reactions from people who, it ranges from justifying it to almost celebrating it. That wasn't the case with Tucker Carlson's newsletter. He is getting some backlash as a result of this. Some people on X are accusing him of sounding more like the Young Turks, but nonetheless, let me give you the details. Tucker Carlson has called out his fellow conservatives for downplaying and even in some cases celebrating the fatal ICE shooting of US citizen Renee Nicole Good. Cenk, are you surprised by this?
I am, and I am pleasantly surprised, and I don't mind saying it. I think what's happening is that the online shows freed from corporate media, Fox News, MSNBC, etc., are now beginning to realize where the American people lie. And the majority of American people were already against mass deportations, let alone these massively excessive violence that is being used. And this was unfortunately a perfect example of it. So I think what people like Tucker Carlson are doing is they're beginning to see, oh, most decent people don't want a 37-year-old Christian woman being shot in the head 3 times because she was trying to run away from law enforcement in that case. So look, this is the development that I was hoping for, but let's give you the facts on what he said.
I do want to just make a quick caveat to your statement about the difference between, corporate media and online digital independent media. There is an exception because Daily Wire hosts are certainly part of the digital media, part that we are in, obviously not ideologically, but in terms of where we air and broadcast our show. They seem to have an inherent interest in dividing the country, because what we've heard from Matt Walsh in the follow-up to this disastrous and tragic incident is only meant to divide Americans. But in the case of Tucker Carlson, he's trying to get people to think a little differently. And I think it's important for people to maybe consider this approach. So his newsletter had the title, "The Minnesota Shooting, Venezuela, Gaza, It's All Connected." Interesting. Now, Carlson begins by stating that yesterday's shooting has served as an opportunity for conservatives to score political points because Good should not have been blocking the road with her car. Hysterical protesters took to the streets, and liberal leaders like Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey are behaving like children. So there was some, typical conservative throat clearing that took place early on in this newsletter. However, that aside, he continues with this. The 37-year-old was an American citizen and reportedly the mother of a kindergarten-age child. I should note that, her child is now an orphan because the father of that child passed away previously. It's just it's tragic. I mean, if you value human life and you think about what the future of that child is going to be, it's a tragic story. It's not something to celebrate or win, political brownie points on. But nonetheless, he also says, did we disagree with her views on immigration? Probably, but that shouldn't matter. Her death is a tragedy regardless of her partisan affiliations, ideological beliefs, or who pulled the trigger. How come so few conservatives are viewing this story through a human lens? And why, when something similar, like the killing of Charlie Kirk, happens on the other side, did many on the left celebrate because they thought his political positions were wrong? And here's Carlson's explanation for why the country is currently undergoing this type of depraved culture. Violence around the world is desensitizing Americans to violence at home.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, and I said something similar to that during the show yesterday when I was covering this story. I do think that we've been desensitized to people getting killed constantly. We've been seeing images of it everywhere for the last 2 years, certainly. And I do think that makes you kind of see human life as something that's just totally disposable. Who cares? Did they agree with my politics?
Yeah, so look, we were super clear on when Charlie Kirk got killed, and we had a human reaction to it, which was that oh my God, that was horrific. He got shot in the neck. He's got kids. He's so young. That's just outrageous. We should all have that same reaction, whether it's left or right. Super obvious. And Tucker, said something that's similar to what you said yesterday. And I didn't see his newsletter this morning. We wrote something nearly identical. So Anna's going to give you more of his quotes, and then I'll give you the tweet that I had. And when populist right and left are beginning to agree, not just about Israel, not just about Epstein files, but about core issues here in America, lower prices, taking care of the average American, and now even how we treat each other. That's such a welcome change. So you're not seeing it everywhere, but you are seeing it here, and you're seeing it with Tucker Carlson. And I think that's a development that we should all greatly welcome.
So, he makes the connection to US foreign policy. So he points out that the kidnapping of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro was part of a larger operation. And if we take US officials at their word, that operation claimed the lives of 75 people in Venezuela. I've seen reports that the number is higher, but let's just take that at face value for the sake of this discussion. Venezuelan officials do state that the death toll is higher. Now, he says, did you know that? Is anyone in Washington or the media talking about it? Dave DeCampo over at antiwar.com has been talking about it, but I take his point. Not many people have been. And then he continues, it doesn't matter how anti-Maduro you are. The deaths of the human beings in his country, even if they were his paid protectors, were tragic, just like goods killing should be seen as a horror show, even from a right-wing perspective. So Carlson cites two other examples of the American government sponsoring violence abroad, and that includes the killing of innocent civilians in Gaza, as well as the killing of Russian combatants and civilians. And he says, America's leaders must stop normalizing bloodshed. That means pulling the plug on funding ethnic cleansing, viewing war as the last option rather than the first. And please, for the love of God, no more Lindsey Graham frothing over the titillating excitement of killing people. I mean, that video of Lindsey Graham after Maduro was abducted, he's on Air Force One. I mean, I've never seen a grown man so giddy in my life. It's amazing. It really is.
And he literally bragged about how many people they killed and how he can't wait for them to kill more and more people. He's a sick, depraved man. And we would have, that would have been obvious to us 20 years ago in this country. If you saw a senator acting like that, I want to kill more people, people would have been super freaked out by it. And part of the problem here is that it's become normal. So Tucker's making that point, and this morning, unaware of his newsletter, I wrote this on X. I remember a time when no one celebrated the death of a 37-year-old mom, that even if you thought it was necessary, you still thought it was a tragedy, and no one thought it was tough, cool, or manly to shoot an unarmed woman in the head. We should have mourned this together. So, Anna, as I see at least Tucker Carlson mourning it, again, no matter what, if you think she did the right thing or the wrong thing, how could you not think that her being shot is a tragedy? Is that a thing to celebrate? Is that a thing where you go, she had it coming? So some now are saying, well, we're not celebrating. We're not celebrating. Although it really looked like it, guys. Really, really looks like it. But then they say, well, she shouldn't have done that. So she should have been with her home with her kid. But she was apparently dropping off her kid. And she has 3 kids, by the way, 2 from an earlier marriage. So.
Can I?
Yeah. Let
me just say something, because there's been a lot of talk about how the ICE agent, the armed ICE agent, was feeling and how scared he was, right? I remember I was pumping gas when a sting operation was underway. So everything's quiet. There's nothing going on at the gas station. I'm pumping gas. And then suddenly all these like SWAT vehicles show up, armed cops. I freaked out. I got so scared. I got in the car and like wanted to drive away with the gas pump still, attached to my vehicle. Like I was in panic mode. Now, luckily nothing happened, right? But when you see a bunch of law enforcement, or in this case, federal agents armed and swarming around your car, how come no one's thinking about how scared she might have been? You know what I'm saying?
100%. Why do you think she tried to pull away from them? She was panicking, right?
Yeah.
And so if you think she deserved to be killed for that, that's amazing to me. But I can't believe that Tucker Carlson of all people, I could believe it today if you told me 2 years ago Tucker Carlson is going to be the one saying maybe we shouldn't celebrate a poor woman dying like this. Everybody on the right, bring it down. I would have been shocked, and I'm glad I'm shocked.
Definitely. Did you want to read Elon Musk's response to you?
No, Elon Musk responded to me, but it's not that interesting. He's in the camp of so what, basically, and this whole thing of, and a lot of the guys are saying this is social media on the right, F around and find out. Is that what you want to say about a 37-year-old mom who left three kids behind? Come on, man, be better than that.
All right, well, in that case, let's take a break. When we come back for the next story, I want to talk a little bit about the ongoing empire building, more from Trump, and how the United States could be taking care of Venezuela for several years. We'll be right back.
Yeah, let's go to Super Chat, guys. Potato Gun Camper says, you get people joining ICE Gestapo when the economy doesn't provide any other viable work for the working class, when people cannot afford healthcare, and when government sells out to the donor class. So, they were offering $50,000 signing bonuses. It's mental. I'm surprised there isn't 1 million people who signed up, right? And that's because Congress appropriated an insane amount of money to ICE, insane. And they literally don't know how to spend it. So, none of this is helping the average American at all. And of course, they love when we're divided and the right wing is blaming immigrants, etc., and you're not looking up. So terrific point. Celtic RN8 says, hey Team Turks, if the vehicle's a lethal weapon, wouldn't it have been more prudent to disable the wheels on the vehicle instead of the American mom driving it? 100% abuse of power. Look, that's a thing that we've talked about here for over a decade. They train the cops that if you're gonna shoot, make sure you murder them. I don't agree with that training. I get it. If you shoot them in the leg and they still have a gun, maybe they kill you, right? In this case, I said, well, she doesn't have a gun. So people on the right were saying, well, if he hadn't shot her in the head, then she might have been only disabled, and she might have been able to drive away and attack other law enforcement. Yeah, she was gonna drive away and attack other cops. Come on, guys, come on. Okay, so Kyle Norman says, what happened to targeting the violent criminals? Are they too scared to go after them? Why do we keep seeing enforcement raids in suburban areas going after women and children? Titan of Olympus 03 says, I believe we're really in a terrible state because anyone they disagree with or don't care for is a terrorist and not human. I don't see how we recover from this. I only see this getting worse. And so that's why I agree with Tucker Carlson on, I think, how we, almost everyone in our politics and in our media nearly celebrated what Israel did to Gaza, has coarsened us. For the sake of Israeli propaganda, everyone was taught killing innocent civilians, if they're the wrong kind of civilians, is perfectly fine. It's a wonderful thing that the greatest democracy in the Middle East would do. Our beloved special allies. No, those 20,000 Palestinian kids had to be murdered. Terrorist, bad guy, etc. So yeah, so now it comes home to roost, and now they're calling people domestic terrorists. And I told you from day one, calling each other terrorists is a disastrous idea. So, all right, but once you call someone a terrorist, you can do anything you want to them. Okay, look, again, Noble Mobile, Anna's right, it is irresistible. 7 minutes probably saves you $500 to $1,000 a year. So tyt.com/switch, tyt.com/switch. And I wanted to say one more thing. 10-year anniversary for Jack Gerard. He's our chief operating officer. He has helped build this company, and he has been an amazing force here. Built the entire infrastructure, and I think we owe so much to the hard work he's done here for over 10 years. He actually was here earlier than that too. And I want to show you guys like Jack because you don't get to see him on the air, but there's so many wonderful people here behind the scenes who have built this place, trying to do right in the world. And I love them for it. We'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Also, Marsh 212. Thank you for joining by hitting the join button. It makes a big difference to the show, guys. We'd literally be off the air if it wasn't for our members. So thank you for supporting us. Anna.
Let's get right to our next story.
I don't know what faction of that group we're ticking off right now with our behavior and going in there and saying the oil's now ours. We're going to sell it. We'll give you a piece of it, but we're taking it. So I really do worry about unintended consequences, and I object to empire. I much prefer the way we started with the original George Washington. Let's avoid foreign entanglements. Let's not cozy up too much to any one country. Let's enjoy the beautiful blessing of the two huge oceans on either side. I don't want to have to take care of Venezuela. I really don't.
During an interview with the New York Times, President Donald Trump says that we could be taking care of Venezuela for years. Now, he referred to it as overseeing Venezuela. So I don't want anyone to mistake this as the US actually looking out for the people of Venezuela. But Megyn Kelly is right to be concerned here. But before we get to the details of what Trump has to say about all of this and more of what Kelly had to say about her view of what the Trump administration just did in Venezuela. Cenk, your 2 cents?
Yes, amazing developments because now it started with Epstein files, then it went to Israel. Now it's gone to, wait, are we sure we should attack Venezuela? And that is the two biggest right-wing hosts in the country saying that. Wow, wait till you see the rest.
Yep. Now I want to talk a little bit about President Trump's comments about what just went down in Venezuela. He's speaking to reporters over at the New York Times, and this is what he had to say about our involvement with Venezuela. How long is the US going to be in this entanglement? Well, here's what Trump had to say. Only time will tell, he said, when asked how long the administration will demand direct oversight of the South American nation with the hovering threat of American military action from an armada just offshore. So Trump's comments came hours after Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke to Congress, in which he outlined a plan to take control of selling Venezuela's oil indefinitely. And there's allegedly some sort of 3-phase plan that the Trump administration is pursuing here. Now, here's what Trump had to say about that. We will rebuild it in a very profitable way. And what he's referring to there is rebuilding the infrastructure in order to allow for American oil companies to extract the crude oil in Venezuela. So that's what he's talking about. And when he says we, he means us, the US taxpayers. We're gonna pay to build that infrastructure on behalf of the oil companies who will then profit from it. The rest of his statement was, we're going to be using oil and we're going to be taking oil. We're getting oil prices down and we're going to be giving money to Venezuela, which they desperately need. I wouldn't hold my breath on the giving money to Venezuela part, but who knows, maybe. Now, during the interview, Trump did not give a precise time range for how long the US would remain in Venezuela's, essentially serve as Venezuela's political overlord. And so he said, would it take 3 months, 6 months, a year, longer? Trump's response was, I would say much longer. Trump appeared far more focused on the capture mission than the details of how to navigate Venezuela's future. He declined to say what might prompt him to put American forces on the ground in the country. He simply said, quote, I wouldn't want to tell you that. I'm sure you wouldn't. Now, would he send troops to Venezuela if the current regime, it's still the same regime, just a different leader, decided to block him from access to their oil? What if they refuse to kick out Russian and Chinese personnel, as the Trump administration has been demanding of the regime? He says, I can't tell you that. I really wouldn't want to tell you that. But they're treating us with great respect. As you know, we're getting along very well with the administration that is there right now. And by the way, I was listening to the Drop Site show, and in it, they were talking about how there were definitely a few officials within the current Venezuelan regime who was essentially defected in a way to make it easier for the Trump administration to capture Nicolas Maduro. And just yesterday, Trump demanded more money from the Pentagon, as if we're not already spending a tremendous amount on military spending. So this is what he posted on Truth Social. After long and difficult negotiations with senators, congressmen, secretaries, and other political representatives, I have determined that for the good of our country, especially in these very troubled and dangerous times, our military budget for the year 2027 should not be $1 trillion, which was insane enough. He wants it to be $1.5 trillion, and then claims this will allow us to build the dream military that we have long been entitled to. Remember when they were pretending like they were going to cut the Pentagon budget? You know, all that waste, fraud, and abuse when it comes to an arm of the federal government that has failed every single audit imaginable. It's just incredible.
Yeah. So it was at 850 billion. They added 150 billion already. These are the people who said they'd cut the Pentagon and waste, fraud, and abuse. Enormous liars, the Trump administration. Even their own voters wanted cuts. Now they're saying, oh, no, we're gonna double it. We're gonna take it from, around 800 to now 1.5 trillion. What is that? Okay, so the most fraudulent, the biggest waste there is in the Pentagon. They can't ever pass an audit. They say half the money they get, they don't know where it goes. I don't know where it is. What do you mean you don't know where it is? So now we're not gonna know where $750 billion is. They're never gonna pass an audit. It's a robbery, an absolute robbery. And are we doing it for defense? No, they literally changed the name of the Defense Department, the Department of War, from the guy who ran as anti-war. Right now, they're having conversations, very literal, and they're saying it publicly, about invading 5 more countries. So Venezuela we just did. So they're saying we got to go back to Iran. We got to do Greenland. And Trump's saying, yes, no, I am seriously considering military options in Greenland. We're not trolling anymore. This isn't trolling, this isn't joking. Actually thinking about invading a fellow NATO country. Have we lost track of how insane that is? How ludicrous that is? I know the great majority of the country hasn't, but apparently some have. And also Colombia, Mexico, and Cuba. Anti-war and constantly like, I didn't win a peace prize, I should win a peace prize. And I'm gonna kill them, and I'm gonna murder them, and I'm gonna attack them, and everything is mine. And he says about the oil that all the proceeds are gonna run through him. Whoa, what is that? What do you mean they're gonna run through you?
We know what that is. We know damn well what that is. It's amazing. Give me the loot. That's who Trump is, okay? Now I wanna get back to Megyn Kelly briefly because she said some other really fascinating things. I wanna give you her full thoughts on her view of what the Trump administration is up to in Venezuela. She did elaborate on Tucker Carlson's show. Let's take a look.
You said right after Maduro got grabbed that you weren't exactly sure, you were skeptical. What are your views of it now?
Yeah, still skeptical. I said, I'm not on a green light posture on this. I'm not on a red light, I'm on a yellow. And I don't love it, I gotta be honest. I, first of all, would prefer we use our military defensively and not offensively, which may be anachronistic, but I'm not really in the mindset at all, especially now with 3 kids who are 2 out of 3 in their teens, of being super bellicose in our language or our approach to the world.
And I don't really see this as necessary. I don't see this one as necessary. I understand what Trump is saying is the reason, and I too appreciate the honesty. I actually appreciate that we're not cloaking it in democracy. Like, we wanted the oil. He was really explicit. And we didn't want them playing footsie with China and Iran and Cuba. Okay, so at least he's being honest about it. But I worry very much about unintended consequences.
Yeah, I mean, the unintended consequences typically do happen after these types of military operations, and it remains to be seen what the consequences will be moving forward. We don't really know what Trump's plan is. The Trump administration isn't really clear about what they intend to do moving forward, and so, and by the way, it does seem like increasingly more and more people are getting frustrated with this situation, not just the anti-war crowd, but Cenk, also the neoliberal crowd who's upset that Trump didn't carry out what they really wanted, which was a full-blown regime change. And so it is interesting to see he is getting jabbed from multiple sides right now. I don't fall in line at all with the neoliberal camp. I don't think that we should be in the business of regime change. And oftentimes these regime change wars leads to a power vacuum, and oftentimes you could end up with a regime that's even worse than the one that you're trying to get rid of. So I actually commend Megyn Kelly for wanting to be a lot more cautious on her views following this military operation in Venezuela. And I want to go to one more video before I hear your thoughts, because if you're wondering, well, wasn't Megyn Kelly one of the Fox anchors that was like totally cheerleading the war in Iraq and other, regime change wars in past administrations? Yeah, you're right about that. But it turns out that she's somewhat remorseful, and so is Tucker Carlson. Take a look.
So that's, I guess, my concern. If, like, all of a sudden you become permanently at war, your own population in some ways becomes the government's enemy, I've noticed.
Well, look, we were, in a way, a part of that during the Iraq war.
Yeah, I know.
At Fox, right? Like, they didn't allow, and we didn't allow, people who were criticizing the war a platform. We mocked them and made fun of them because I think we thought it was our duty to defend the war. And I see Fox News doing that right now. There's not really a skeptical voice over there about what we're doing in Venezuela. And I'm fine with the people who support the Venezuela move. Then I've been having them on my show all week and giving the president his due to hear what are the detractors saying and what are the supporters saying. And that's up for the audience to make up their mind. If they disagree with me on my stance, that's fine. It's great. No more power to them. But, that's not the job when you're on Fox News. And when I was there, I'll speak for myself, it was very clear to me what the job was, which was to root for it, to defend it, period.
So, Cenk, I'm so curious about your thoughts, because I've been saying this about Tucker Carlson on multiple occasions. He's been, openly remorseful for the way that he handled the lead up to the Iraq war as the Iraq war was happening. And now we've got Megyn Kelly rethinking her views on foreign policy. What do you think?
It's an awesome development, a wonderful development. I mean, I didn't think I'd live long enough to say Megyn Kelly talking about the unintended consequences of war and how we should be way more careful and we should actually just protect our homeland instead of going on all of these military adventures. And it's super clear why Tucker and Megyn have turned around on these issues. And we're not the ones hypothesizing about it. They're literally saying it on air. You just heard her say it. We showed you Tucker saying it before. Why? We were right. Fox News is corporate media, and Fox News wants war. They want war because it makes money for the donor class. And so there's a lot of different reasons they want war. Fox News is massively Israel first, neocon. And by the way, to Anna's earlier point, there's almost no difference between the neocons and the neoliberals. So they both represent the elites, the establishment, the uniparty. They both want war. They both support Israel. They both support the defense contractors, the oil companies, etc. The neocons and the neoliberals are here to rob us. And part of the robbery is you got to get people to hate each other. And so there's another secret, wonderful part of this, which is that the Great Awakening is beginning to get people to realize not just that we're getting robbed. And again, guys, it's not, look, we talk a lot about Israel, and we certainly have over the last few years because they were committing a genocide and keep asking for endless money from us. But it's not about Israel. The awakening is about realizing that all of the donor class, the corporations, the foreign governments, all of them are robbing us blind. But there's a second awakening that's happening, which is that it's not just that they're robbing us, they need a distraction, they need us to look away. It's like a magic trick. If you're looking at where they want you to look, you're looking in the wrong place. Because as they're doing the trick with this hand, they're doing something else with this hand, which is reaching into your wallet and robbing you. So the place where they want you to look is the culture wars. Fight all the immigrants, the Somali guy came in, the guy from Honduras just came in. Oh my God, they're robbing you. No, Wall Street's robbing you. Are you crazy? Oil companies getting 35 billion a year, et cetera, right? So that's point number one, that as to why I love this development. Now, secondly, she's right on the substance, Anna. And again, what an amazing moment in American history where the Young Turks, Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson all agree, and we're not agreeing on like the mainstream media would say, oh, the horseshoe theory, they're agreeing on radical things. No, we're agreeing on what the great majority of the American people also believe. Trump won the election.
We don't want war.
Yeah.
Ooh, so radical. Ooh, so dangerous. Yeah, we don't want war. How about that? We want our resources to stay here at home. We want our government to take care of us, the American people, rather than work on behalf of oil companies and private industry and major corporations so they can maximize their profits while we pay for all the risks associated with their businesses.
Yeah, and so all of the left, almost all of the left agrees to that, except our politicians and the people in media. Mainstream media at least. Now a huge percentage of the right agrees with that, and an enormous percentage of independents agree with that. So the whole country is united, and it's not left versus right. It's us versus them, the people in power, the elites, the establishment, et cetera. So lastly, Anna, the thing that they're both concerned about is exactly what we're concerned about when it comes to Venezuela, which is Trump is now high on his own supply. Right, he thinks he's invincible. They did the Iran operation and we didn't lose anyone, and it was efficient, wonderful tactics. I hate it. I don't want it. I think it's the wrong strategy. But did they carry it out well tactically by the military? Of course they did. Same thing in Venezuela. Unreal how efficient our military is. That doesn't mean that every operation is going to go perfectly. That doesn't mean that you're not going to have to put in ground troops anywhere, right? And it doesn't mean that you could take constant risk, attack any country you like, kidnap any leader, kill anyone you like, and that there's never going to be consequences. No, I'm guaranteeing you right now, we are headed to disaster. Trump thinks he could do anything he wants, and we're this close to a disaster. Well, I could give you a million reasons, including Trump doesn't plan. So they go into a press conference and Rubio and Trump and Hegseth are all saying different things. And then Stephen Miller gets on TV and he says a different thing about who's running the country. Was it to arrest him, or was it war? Was it an attack? What's the plan afterwards? Are we going with the opposition, or are we going with who's left? They didn't even fully plan that before they attacked a sovereign nation. That's crazy. When you don't, like guys, it's like playing a football game without huddling. If you don't huddle and know what the play is, you're gonna run into a disaster. The other team's gonna annihilate you eventually. Not to say Venezuela or Iran is gonna annihilate us. It's to say that we're playing a dangerous game without having any plans. Lastly, Anna, the Venezuelan tanker that left, in the middle of as it was running away from us, and this is one of the tankers, they asked the Russians for permission to put up the Russian flag and become a Russian tanker. And the Russians said yes. And then we attacked and seized the tanker anyway. That is super dangerous. Luckily, the Russians didn't retaliate. They had pulled a sub next to the tanker. If the sub fires because they view it as a Russian tanker, we're not just in a war with Venezuela, et cetera. All of a sudden, we're in the middle of a war with a nuclear country. Yep. No, he's playing with fire. And when you play with fire long enough, you're definitely gonna get burned. And in this case, it's gonna be us, the American citizens, that get burned.
We always get burned. Anyway, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little more about this interview with Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson, because she goes after Fox News pretty aggressively. But more importantly, she starts to question whether her support for Israel was due to the fact that she was spoon-fed propaganda from Israel firsters. That and more coming up. Don't miss it.
Hey, Andrew, what's up?
Hey, Cenk, you ready to make the switch?
Yeah, I guess.
I promise it's easy, universal, basic, and you get income.
Yeah, you keep saying that. But you sure I'm gonna have coverage?
Of course you will. You think I would have bad service? I'm Andrew Yang. Of course I have good service.
All right, let's try it. But I'm so bad at tech. So, wait. Should I do this thing of the hashtag business? Andrew, you're still on, right?
Yep.
Oh, I see it. No, wait, I don't see. Oh, yeah, I do see it. Here we go.
I actually did not realize that you'd be searching in real time, but I love it.
How much do people actually normally say?
Yeah, the average American is going to save between $500 and $1,000 a year on Noble.
Yeah, no. You know what I'm going to do, Andrew? Are you ready to become a Noble member? The two buttons are do it and go back. There's no going back. We're doing it.
We're doing it.
Here we go, Noble Mobile.
Oh my gosh, I just called you and are you now on Noble and not Verizon?
Why didn't you tell me it was gonna be super easy?
I know, man. Now you just stay away from your phone and watch the money roll in.
I can do that. Here you go, phone, yeah.
What the Cenk, you still there?
Andrew? Oh, well, at least I got Noble Mobile.
It was really just one take. The whole thing is wild.
It's in my shoe. It's in my shoes. Hi, I'm Brett Ehrlich with breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. This is breaking news with Brett Ehrlich. Hi, Brett Ehrlich here. According to EPA head Scott Pruitt, climate change is not happening. He cited a meme on Facebook he saw. When pressed to back up this source, he said it must be accurate because the watermark said it was made by a scientist. So, your move, Truth.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT, TYT. The place is like 95% TYT on.
Favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
Cenk and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
All the people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think one side seems to be winning, they seem to have a bigger army. There might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
This is a robbery!
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Also, RSVY5PH, those handles on YouTube. I love you for joining. Thank you for doing that. Makes a huge difference for us. CDN, Norse Dog Dad, thank you for gifting a membership. We can't do this without you guys. We're not the Young Turks, you're the Young Turks. We do this together as a community. I love that you want an honest and independent show. Thank you for that. Anna.
Well, Megyn Kelly continues with her evolution on various foreign policy related views, and you're about to hear more of them.
How much of the narrative that is in our news today has been spoon-fed to me by people who are super pro-Israel at all costs? The Fox News of yesteryear, which just has a knee-jerk response to things like Israel, to things like war, is out of touch with today's young Republicans.
Yes.
Today's under 50-year-old conservative men and women are over that bullshit.
There you have a longtime conservative member of the media, Megyn Kelly, questioning whether she was propagandized to support Israel during her time as an anchor on Fox News. And she also took some jabs at Ben Shapiro during this interview on Tucker Carlson's show. But before we get to any of that, Cenk, dying to know your 2 cents.
No, I'm dying for the audience to see the clips, because what she says about Fox News, Israel, and Muslims is stunning. It's an amazing development. Let's watch them.
I want to begin with her, essentially kind of looking back and questioning, wait, why did I have like this unwavering support for Israel? Like, why do I call myself a Zionist, right? And she does, even in the context of this interview, she calls herself a Zionist. Well, she gets into that, but also questions why she's been convinced that Muslims are so evil. So let's take a look at that.
How much of the narrative that is in our news today has been spoon-fed to me by people who are super pro-Israel at all costs, who won't tell the truth about Israel, no matter what it is, and will cancel you if you don't befriend or defriend people who do. And so this whole thing has made me reevaluate. Like, I'm just starting from square one, basically, on Israel right now. And I'm actually day by day taking a much harder look at who are they? What do they do? How do I find real information on what happened in this war in Gaza that I will trust? Because I do know I'm being propagandized by both sides. And how will I make up my own mind? I do start to wonder, like, how much of the very negative messaging about all Muslims, and I've been a part of some of that negative messaging. Don't get me wrong. I'm not wavering from my position that, like, it's not great to have an Islamist running New York City. But how much of the narrative has come from people who are just ardently pro-Israel and need me to hate them?
So that jab at Zoran Mamdani aside, I think that the fact that she's starting to ask these questions is a really good sign. And in fact, what she's going through right now resonates with me, because I feel like I kind of started questioning my own views on certain things a few years ago. And that level of self-questioning, that journey is a very difficult, awkward, uncomfortable journey to undergo. But I think once you make it out the other side, you have a far better perception of what's happening in the country. You have a better grasp of the actual views that your political opponents have. And it actually has a positive impact on your level of optimism, because you realize that some of the propaganda that you've been willing to believe, maybe unwittingly, had a much darker view of people in this country than you would have otherwise believed. So anyway, I'm really curious to see how this personal growth develops when it comes to Megyn Kelly, but I'm really happy that she's asking herself these questions right now.
So amazing development. So look, we talk about the Great Awakening, and now I'm seeing others do it on both sides. I've had a podcast earlier this week, and they're talking about the Great Awakening. And people on the right are talking about the Great Awakening. And the Great Awakening isn't just about Israel, guys. So yes, Israel has done overwhelming propaganda in this country. And once people see it, it's just like the Wizard of Oz. Once you show them the man behind the curtain, not only do they go, oh, that's where it got into my head. These guys have been pumping this into corporate media my whole lifetime, and now I see why they're doing it, etc. You begin to realize that almost all of the traditional media that we watched our whole lives and read our whole lives, and that this applies to me as well as everyone, it's almost all propaganda. So the awakening starts with Israel, but it isn't about Israel. Then you realize, oh wait, why do we all hate Muslims? And I'm not saying the whole country does, but a lot of folks do, and etc. And you see them struggling with it on air in the right. It's amazing. Candace Owens did it, then Tucker Carlson, now Megyn Kelly. And these are the biggest figures on the right in media going, I think we might have been taught to hate Muslims because Israel wanted us to attack them for their benefit. Exactly. I can't believe they figured it out. That's amazing. That is as good a development as I've ever seen. But still, it's the tip of the iceberg. The iceberg is when you realize, oh, wait a minute, Fox News and MSNBC and CNN are all corporate media. And as we've been telling you guys here for so long, they don't actually disagree. The only things they disagree over are culture wars and identity politics, the things that drive us apart, get us to fight one another, distract us. So when it gets to, wait, you see her grappling with it right there in the clips, and there's more, where she's like, wait, who's on the board of Fox News? Who are the owners of these corporate media, and what do they want? Do they want us to support Israel? Overwhelmingly, yes. But get beyond that. Oh, they want us to go into more and more wars. Wait, do they also have stock in defense contractors and oil companies, etc.? Who are these forces that are getting us to divide based on ethnicities and race and gender, and who are not serving the American people at all, but doing those news stations as propaganda completely? It's not news at all. It's theater. They're pretending the politicians are honest, and that the billions of dollars that they've gotten from donors don't affect them at all. And that also applies to New York Times, Washington Post, and all the other people pretending to be doing objective news. No, now that we've got independent shows online, Young Turks on the left, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson on the right, etc. By the way, also Rogan and Tim Dillon and Theo Vaughn and Andrew Schultz, Charlemagne, everyone is waking up at the same time and going, oh, the news hasn't been the news. It's just been marketing for the rich and powerful and for corporations and foreign governments. We've all been lied to. That's the Great Awakening.
Well, I would exclude Rogan from that. Rogan is making a concerted effort to avoid any type of controversial political issue, and he made that very clear during a recent episode where he was hosting Kurt Metzger, and that was really sad to see. But anyway, that's beside the point. I want to move on to the next clip. In this part of the discussion, Megyn Kelly thinks that, the fact that Fox is constantly beating the war drums will ultimately lead to the downfall of Fox News Channel. Take a look.
The Fox News of yesteryear, which just has a knee-jerk response to things like Israel, to things like war, is out of touch with today's young Republicans.
Yes.
Today's under 50-year-old conservative men and women are over that bullshit. They are. They do not want war cheerleaders or Israel cheerleaders. They have healthy skepticism of both. And if Fox doesn't start understanding that and making room with its elbow for that kind of coverage to start not just occasionally being spouted on their network, but become a serious part of the network, the way Roger did after Trump took over the Republican Party and started to sort of shove out the more establishment types, or at least make room for the new MAGA types, they will fail. So they will continue with the Murdoch's mission, or even with the old Roger Ailes mission, which was very, very neocon-y, at their own peril.
In this case, I don't think that Fox News is going to be able to include, anti-war perspectives, anti-interventionist, talent, for lack of a better word, because that threatens their profit model, right? So incorporating so-called MAGA people into their programming, I think, is a lot easier. And you can do it in a way that doesn't threaten your revenue the way that essentially inviting anti-war voices would. So ultimately, I don't think that Fox is going to change course when it comes to beating the war drums.
There's no chance Fox News changes course. I mean, look, MSNBC and CNN didn't change course until their parent companies, not until, they didn't change course despite the fact that their parent companies spun them off, meaning that they're dead in the water and have no chance of recovery. And they're just gonna get sold for parts eventually, and they still won't change. And look, the donors have so much power, and these giant corporations have so much power. Kamala Harris, 92% of our own voters wanted her to get out of Israel or to criticize Israel and all these things, and she wouldn't do it. The independents wanted her to do it. She could have picked up a couple of points. She could have won Michigan, etc. And she would rather have lost than change course on Israel or any of the donors. And so that's true also of Fox News and MSNBC and CNN. They're never going to change course. They're just going to drive right over that cliff. And so in the old days, though, I had no hope that they were going to drive over the cliff, because since they were the only game in town, and we're here at the Young Turks for 20 years screaming into the abyss, they're lying. It's the donors. It's all about the money, Lebowski. It's so obvious it's about the money. The number one rule of journalism was supposed to be follow the money. And the New York Times and CNN, et cetera, like, we will never follow the money. If you talk about donors, that's conspiratorial. How dare you? They would literally attack the people giving you the actual facts and the actual news. They still do it today. Like, for example, if you talk about how much money AIPAC gives to our politicians, they'll call you an anti-Semite. They won't say, oh, you're right, 94% of Congress has gotten money from the Israeli lobby. They'll say, shut up, never report that fact, and if you do, we'll ruin your life. That's not news, that's propaganda. So, Anna, I'm over the moon about this. I mean, look, we said that we saw something coming a year, 2 years ago, that this type of thing would happen, where the right wing would begin to move. And I wouldn't have predicted that the move would be this large and this significant and this quick. And it's not about moving to the left, guys. It's about moving to a populist position where you realize that the average American is getting screwed. They've been lied to their whole lives, and it's time to get up and fight back and stop having partisan brain and unite enough to actually fight the guys who have rigged the rules your whole life. And those are the people up top. They're not being under you, they're not to your left, they're not to your right, they're up top, the donor class.
You're right about that. Now, I want to go to one more video. This one I particularly enjoyed because, and it's a little lengthy, but it's worth a listen. This whole notion that you shouldn't just be held responsible for your own statements, but that you should be held responsible for the statements of your friends or your associates or your colleagues. It's the type of culture that I despise, and I've seen plenty of it on the left. I mean, I know that there have been hosts at TYT who have been pressured to condemn and denounce me because some people didn't like my opinion on one thing or the other. How about you leave the other hosts alone? And you got an issue with me, deal with me. But people should be held responsible for what they themselves say. Okay, guilt by association is so utterly lame and middle school. So she talks about the attacks that she's been getting because she refused to denounce Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. And so she takes a jab at Ben Shapiro as well. Let's take a quick look.
And some are calling me an anti-Semite. Why? What did I say? What did I do? Did I step on a rake and say something super anti-Semitic without realizing it? No, it's because I won't defriend you, and I won't condemn and say that Candace Owens is hateful. They want me really, really badly to condemn Candace Owens. And I'm sorry to break it to them, but I am responsible for what I say, not for what anybody else says. I am not Candace Owens's policeman. And by the way, they're kidding themselves that if just one more voice will say something nasty about Candace, she could finally be controlled. Like, how well has that worked so far? But again, the instinct is to stop her speech, stop it, make her stop it, make Tucker stop saying the things. Well, I have no desire to, and I have no power to. And for that, I was called a coward by Ben Shapiro at the Turning Point event, AmFest, in December, who, by the way, in my last exchange with him, literally said, our friendship, his and mine, is too important to both of us to make it depend on whom else we are friends with and aren't friends with. That is literally the last text I have from Ben Shapiro. The next thing I knew, he was standing on the stage at Turning Point calling me a coward for this very thing.
That is so shady. That is so shady. But that was his last text to her right before he said what he said on the stage at AmFest, calling her a coward because she refused to denounce and defriend certain people that Shapiro doesn't like.
Yeah.
Cenk, any final thoughts?
Yeah, so among these different donors, the one that does the most cancel culture, honestly, is Israel First, right? And so for guys like Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin, and that doesn't mean everyone who likes Israel or supports Israel or has some sort of connection to Israel, but guys who are Israel-brained, right? They have no friends. They have no allies. They have no allegiance to the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, to Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, none of that. Their only allegiance is Israel. And so if you're pro-Israel, then they love you. You criticize Israel 1%, they despise you, want you to shut up, and they would ruin your career in a second. So they're absolutely obsessed to the point of nearly being deranged. And unfortunately, there's a lot of those folks. They think Israel is the most important thing by a factor of 1 billion. And partly because they have been brainwashed their whole lives into thinking, if you don't support Israel, all Jews are gonna die. So in their mind, by any means necessary, we protect Israel. And it leads to a very radical position. But now, again, tip of the iceberg, more important part is the guilt by association and cancel culture is about making sure that you shut up any dissenters on any issue. So if the powerful want you to shut up, they'll find a way to shut you up. They'll do character assassination first, and both left and right. Elliot Spitzer, sheriff of Wall Street, holding the bankers accountable. All of a sudden, they hire a private detective, track him down, find him with a prostitute, and end his career, right? And then on the right, all of a sudden, Madison Cawthorn or anyone that raises their head and says, well, you know what? Some of the guys on our side are wrong too. Oh, look at this. We've had these pictures of him dressed like this and that the entire time, but never released it. But the minute he criticizes someone we don't want, someone who's powerful, then we're gonna ruin him. Character assassination. And then if you say anything where you platform them, talk to them, say anything positive, guilt by association. The whole point of this giant cancel culture machine is to shut Americans up and make sure they bow their heads and follow the rules and the propaganda of the powerful. So don't let them do that to you, whether you're on the right or the left. The First Amendment is freedom of speech, freedom of press, and yes, the freedom to criticize and protest your government. Do not let them take the most American freedom and rights and core issues away from us. We have to keep America as it is, as actually these wonderful things enshrined in our Constitution, and not the propaganda that is given to you by traditional media, the politicians, and all the corrupt who have been trying to brainwash us our whole lives into compliance and obedience with them. Do not be obedient, be an American.
Unfortunately, when we come back, we have to talk a little bit about Elon Musk's decision to flaunt white supremacy recently. So we've got that and more coming up. Don't miss it.
Tucker Carlson, a terrible friend.
All right, back on TYT. Let's go to Super Chat first. Okay, Bachelored out of work says Kristi Noma's bat crap witch queen who proudly blasted her own family dog for being too naughty. Now she's screeching domestic terrorism over a mom in a Honda. No plastic face has to be thrown in Arkham Asylum. That's from Batman. Claiming Renee weaponized her SUV like a tank. If slowly driving away is terrorism, every traffic jam is a national threat. Wild exaggeration. That is totally true. It continues, and then also saying the agent followed training perfectly, training that turns a minor traffic issue into a tragedy. Classic overreach. Her logic is weaker than her pathetic book sales. And finally, he says, then comes Trump, the stare-dodging con man, calls his self-defense while the agent walks away unhurt. Zero ramming on video, stick to bankrupt casinos, stop chasing fake stories for social media. We were talking about it off air, we talked about it on air before. Trump's not gonna be satisfied until he bankrupts us. That's his go-to move. Get a lot of debt and then don't pay it back. And on a personal level, he's been able to get away with it. But on a national level, we can't get away with it. That eventually leads to out of control inflation and many other problems and could totally destroy the economy of this country. It's sick what's happening. And that's perfect training, by the way. ICE shooting somebody in the head 3 times in that scenario is perfect training. Well, that scares me if they think that's their idea of perfect.
Can I jump in, Cenk, real
yeah,
quick?
Definitely.
This story is breaking. We don't know the details, so we're not gonna do a full story on it. I wanna make sure that we have time to actually look at all the details. But federal immigration officers have shot and wounded 2 people in Portland, Oregon. They have been sent to the hospital. That's all I know so far about the story. So anyway, it's just, we're living in a scary world. We really are.
They're turning the citizens into the enemy. Like,
now we don't know the details, so I just want to we should.
I hear you. I'm saying in general.
Yeah.
I'm saying in general.
Yeah.
Okay, Anna, you got an event this weekend, right?
Oh yeah, I do. I am going to be debating Just Pearly Things. That's the handle she goes by on social media at Word War Debate. Okay, so we're the headline debate. I will be debating her on the topic of modern feminism, which is a weird topic to have as a headline debate, but I promise you it'll be entertaining in the very least. So you can check out tickets at Word, WORD, worlddebate.com.
Interesting. You're going to Atlantic City, personally?
Yeah, I've never been to Atlantic City, so yeah, I'm going there. That's where the debate is held.
Oh, that's super fun. Okay,
Should I do some gambling?
Oh, hell yeah! And I'm going to be in Vegas this weekend, so.
Oh, I'd rather be in Vegas.
No, Atlantic City's good change of pace. All right, more folks here on YouTube member section. Richie Dog says, even if she bumped into him, he should not have murdered her. Box says this case is not going to make it past the grand jury. The charges will be dropped. He will not be judged based on the video. He'll be judged based on his perception at the time of the incident. I understand what you're saying about perception. I think you're being a little aggressive in saying that you're sure that it's going to get dropped. I don't think that's the case at all. But he will have that defense, and it will be powerful during the trial, in my opinion. We'll be back.
I fully expect a daily proctology exam.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news.
All right, let's get right to our next story.
I hope Trump goes in and just cleans out this entire Somali constituency and ships them back to the third world dump they came from.
The Democrats have a little bit of a Somali problem. They've let it
America has a bit of a Somali problem.
Somalia is a rape culture. Africa, the African continent is a rape culture. They rape people there a lot in the Middle East, in the subcontinent. That's what they do. And so we don't like that, right?
Look at how we got Trump to cave in such a short amount of time. And look at how beautifully he delivered. Look at how beautifully he understood the assignment completely. He comes out and says, all these brown people do is bitch in their hijabs and they're ungrateful and they stink and we don't want them here. I mean, it couldn't be better if you dreamed it up.
conservative politicians and media figures are launching some pretty racist attacks against Somali immigrants, Somalis in general. I mean, they might not even be immigrants. They might be American citizens with Somali heritage. But just very briefly, I would like to address what we just heard about Somalis having a rape culture. How about our federal government covering up the Epstein files and the rape of minors? How about the fact that that was very likely a blackmail operation carried out by Mossad, which of course is Israeli intelligence? You want to talk about Israeli rape culture? I'd love to talk about Israeli rape culture. How about all the American Jews who flee to Israel to avoid charges of rape and pedophilia? Anyway, not to make this about Israel, but if you want to talk about rape culture, rape's been in the news quite a bit lately. We can talk about rape culture.
And
it's
don't
disgusting.
Don't forget the cybersecurity official that came here to rape underage American girls, and then we let him go because beloved Israel has their rape culture, and we can't criticize it. Israeli IDF soldiers raped Palestinians in prison. It's on video. It's clear. So look, guys. We're saying if you're going to say that, we can point out the hypocrisy here. The reality is, of course, no country or continent has a rape culture overall. What winds up happening is either isolated incidents or a system that is too permissive and dehumanizes others, as Israel has done to the Palestinians. But no one is collectively guilty. That's insane.
So Michael Knowles was the one who made the comment about the rape culture because of course he's a host at the Daily Wire and their bread and butter is to divide Americans to the best of their abilities, constantly focusing on identity, who's dangerous, who you should hate. I mean, if Daily Wire didn't focus on that, what would their content be? They're disgusting. Anyway, let's watch more of what JD Vance had to say during an interview because he made a pretty ridiculous claim about how Somali immigrants are to blame for all of your problems.
What's going on in Minneapolis, I think, is actually representative of a broader fraud scheme that we're going to see all over the country. We're going to see it in California. We're going to see it in other places too, where people get rich from the American taxpayer. The Somalian fraud, for example, daycare fraud. You've got Americans, we've got programs set up to make it easier for Americans to get their kids in daycare so they can have proper childcare. You take that money and you siphon it off to Somalian fraudsters. That's a double theft. Number one, that means a lot of American families can't afford their child care. Number two, that means a lot of American taxpayers are being fleeced. It's totally unacceptable.
Let me be abundantly clear about something right now, okay? We have a fraud problem all over the country when it comes to these programs because our politicians are incompetent buffoons. No state has a bigger fraud problem when it comes to public programs than California. But no one's focusing on California because there isn't a group of Muslims that can be demonized and fear-mongered about. So the fraud that's happening in my state, totally okay. I mean, maybe there'll be, I wrote an entire lengthy investigative report about what's going on in California. No one cares, no one cares.
Yeah.
So the idea that fraud is inherently a Somali problem is insane to me. How about our government officials don't know how to do their jobs properly, don't know how to carry out these programs properly to ensure that fraud doesn't take place? How about that?
Yeah, look, so we're a show that asked the people on the left, please stop calling every Trump voter a fascist, racist, et cetera, et cetera. It's not productive and it's also not true. The Trump voters are a variety of people, including a lot of independents who wanted to vote for Bernie, et cetera. They don't all fit into one mold. That doesn't mean that no one in the country is racist or none of the politicians push racism as a tool, whether they personally feel it themselves or not. They're using it as, they're weaponizing it. And when you say America has a Somali problem, there's no ands, ifs, or buts about that. That is a directly racist position, right? So now is Vance deeply racist against Somalis and he always has been? I don't know, but I doubt it. I doubt it was that specific, right? So what I think is happening is he's thinking, well, the real fraud's at the Pentagon, for example, and it used to be have an $850 billion budget, and that's a $850 billion. That is so much larger than anything happening in Minnesota. And we promised people that they couldn't pass an audit, but we were gonna make them pass an audit and we were gonna cut. And now we were giant liars. We've added to the fraud. We added 150 billion. Now Trump's saying let's make it 1.5 trillion. And they're never gonna pass an audit. And we're robbing the American people blind there. His stupid donors and Palantir and all these guys. The great American robbery is happening. And he's like, oh no, don't look here, don't look here. I want you to look over there. Somalis, Muslims, immigrants, you should hate them. You should hate them. They're the only ones doing fraud. Are you kidding me? There's massive fraud in almost all the states and almost every department in the federal government. And then they brought in Doge, and Doge didn't cut any of that fraud. They went after like random federal government workers, the average American, and they couldn't find the 35 billion in oil subsidies. They're liars. JD Vance represents the rich, powerful elites. And he's using racism as a tool and a weapon. And all the people that you saw in those clips, they're giant liars. And they're trying to divide you, and they're trying to mainly get you to not look at the actual robbery, but hate one another so that you're busy fighting each other while they rob the place blind.
Meanwhile, Elon Musk, who recently made amends with President Donald Trump, reacted with the 100% emoji to the following post. It says, if white men become a minority, we will be slaughtered. Remember, if non-whites openly hate white men while white men hold a collective majority, then they will be 1,000 times more hostile and cruel when they are the majority over whites. White solidarity is the only way to survive. I mean, just, okay. So again, Elon Musk responded with 100, meaning he agreed with that. But Ryan Grimm's response to Elon Musk is worth a read. He says, the South African racial mongering is so out of place, and time here, it's bizarre. Go to any sports bar on a Sunday, you'll notice this country is not the apartheid regime you grew up in. That's exactly right. And I remember once like fall began and I happened to be in New York City. Oh, the weather was amazing. And I just remember walking through the streets of New York City and feeling like so good about how wonderfully diverse. Like what makes New York City incredible is the diversity, like all the different restaurants and different cuisines and different cultures. Like that is what, in my opinion, makes America the best country. It's like we have the best of the world coming together. And so like this weird brain rot issue that like Elon Musk is obsessed with, like you go to therapy, deal with your own problems. Okay, but stop engaging in this ridiculous rhetoric that's only meant to divide Americans based on their heritage, right? I see myself as an American. I love and celebrate my Armenian heritage, but at the end of the day, I'm an American who loves this country, and I just absolutely loathe any politician who's gonna try to convince me that I should be afraid of anyone who just looks different from me.
Yeah, and it's also projection. So they're like, oh, imagine if they become the majority, they would probably deeply abuse the minority. Or that's what's in your head and what you think is what people would naturally do. And Elon comes from South Africa, where he grew up in an environment where the white people were a minority, but they had all the power, and they treated Africans in South Africa as despicably as you could possibly imagine. Apartheid was literally making racism the law of the land and saying that black people are inferior, etc. And I guess Elon thinks, well, that's going to be the system either way. And if it turns out white people don't have enough power because they're a minority in a democracy, well, I assume that the other side will do what we did in South Africa, which is brutalize the people without power. No, you don't have to do that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree. And look, I do not in any way defend anyone who says gross, disgusting, discriminatory statements about white people either. And if you're on the left and you're against discrimination, you should be against all forms of discrimination. You should keep in mind that every action has an equal reaction. So if you think it's okay to go around and say racist things about white people based on the color of their skin, you're gonna receive backlash, and that backlash is not gonna be pretty. Discrimination of all forms is wrong, period.
Yeah, look, we stood up against some of the most extreme abuses of DEI and telling white women to shut up at work and listen and all that garbage. But that was overreaching, and it went too far, and now it's gone, right? So, but this idea that white people are deeply oppressed in this country, no. So one of our members just wrote in and saying about Minnesota, look, they said from an African-American perspective, we always knew that we could get shot at any moment from the cops, et cetera, and we didn't have any power. He's like, I think white people are freaking out because they're now beginning to see all the citizens are starting to be treated like black people. And anyone could get shot by the cops at any moment. She was a 37-year-old white woman with 3 kids at home, et cetera, right? And so guys, it's not about white or black. It's not about Somali versus the others. It's not about Africa versus Europe or any of that garbage that they're trying to put out there. It's the powerful versus the powerless. It's the elites versus the average American. It's not Republicans or Democrats. It's not even right versus left. It's all of these people with tremendous power who are trying so hard to divide us and get us to hate each other and to fight each other, while they go, oh, give me more subsidies for Starlink and Tesla and SpaceX. I want. And I don't want anybody to notice, so I'll cut from the powerless, I'll attack the powerless. And at this point, that's all Elon Musk has got. You should pay attention to the subsidies he's getting and how much he's taken from the American people. He's taken billions off of us. When are we getting that money back, Elon?
Preach. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be right back.
All right, let's go to our members at tyt.com. Progressive at 60 says, Anna, your hair looks so beautiful today. And there was no justification for shooting and killing Renee Good. So sure, I'll agree with both of those. Oh, look at this. Benji6478 said, I joined this morning at the $100 annual level. Wow, thank you. Putting my money where my heart is never felt so good. Speaking truth to power has never been more important. Do a multi-city tour, please. I missed a show in Pittsburgh in the mid-2000s, and I would so buy tickets if the opportunity were there. Love the show, of course. Oh, Benji, I can't thank you enough. And God, do we need that, and I appreciate it. And all of you guys make a difference. Every single one of you makes a difference. And I'll tell you this, if the Steelers win the Super Bowl, I guarantee you I'll go to Pittsburgh. So let's make that happen. Not that we can, but listen, I'm gonna root so hard. I'm so needlessly excited about the Steelers. I know they're like coming in with the lowest odds, but there's something may potentially a little magical about them this year. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I'm super biased on that. Care41 another says, a good drinking game. Drink every time Cenk says, etc. And Anna says, bitch. It makes these hard topics easier. TYT's the best. I didn't notice that she was saying that so much, but okay, that's awesome.
I gotta, you like it, so I'll think about you every time I consider saying it, but then hold back a little bit because I don't want to be cursing up a storm on this show. Come on, I want to be professional. Bitch.
I knew it. I knew you couldn't stop. All right. Mountain Chaos writes in, Anna, thank you for looking so amazing and having your beautiful smile every day. You're a bright, shining light in these dark times.
Very nice. Thank you.
Scoopster with the insult of the day. Thanks, Jack. We talked about Jack Gerard earlier. He's our chief operating officer. Couldn't do it without him. Jack and I work together every day on so many of these issues. But Scoopster says, thanks, Jack. You look like you could be a Uyghur. Oh, don't do that to him on his 10th anniversary. Although, let me just comment on Jack real quick, since I didn't get an opportunity earlier. Jack is awesome. We all love Jack, and he
he just has this like calm aura about him, even in the most turbulent times. And so he's perfect for TYT. We needed that.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And to be fair, there are a lot of good-looking Uyghurs. I just don't happen to be among them. My kids look great. And I got nephews that look good. Anyways, the Rural Dragon says, I despise ICE, but consider trying to join them with the intention of trying to help keep the psychopaths in check. My family of 4 is on food stamps. The money would be life-changing. Ultimately, I haven't been able to betray my morality, even if I would be leaking the locations we were going. Well, yeah, I'd be careful about that stuff. But the reason I read that is because that's real, man. That's folks are struggling, and then they come in with these outrageous offers to join ICE, and they're trying to get people to go and do this, go on a dark path there. And I hate that they're doing that. The only time they ever help an average American is if you're willing to beat up on other people and kick them out of the country, etc. That's the only time they'll help you. Eclectic writes in, so JD Vance is seriously claiming that an unarmed Renee Good committed a terrorist attack against the American people by getting shot to death by ICE. Truth and logic no longer matter. You got that right, brother. All right, we'll be right back.
The key for me is to keep expectations low. The key for me is to keep expectations low.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. One more story.
All right, let's get right to it.
The attempt to stop corporations, major corporations from buying up single family homes. It sounds fun and it sounds good and it will have literally zero impact on the cost of housing. So this is just bad policy.
I disagree about this supposedly being bad policy, but Ben Shapiro is essentially opposing President Donald Trump's claim that he plans to ban institutional investors from buying up single family homes. Now, the question of whether that's going to significantly help lower the cost of housing, that's something that, is a lot more, I would say, complicated. I don't think that's the main thing that'll lower the cost of housing. But to say this is bad policy is ridiculous when we're in the middle of a massive housing shortage. But Cenk, your 2 cents?
Yeah, so Trump is actually doing the right thing here. Whether he means it is a different question, but we're the fairest show in America. But the second part is about Ben Shapiro. Why is he now attacking Trump on this issue? That's really important.
Because he's funded by, the types of people who benefit from the types of policies that institutional investors make profit from. So we're talking about private equity firms buying up residential real estate and essentially doing it to corner the rental market. These homes don't get flipped, they turned into rentals, and that lowers the stock of available residential homes that working class families usually buy in order to build wealth. Now, as we're in the middle of a housing shortage, I think it makes sense to ban institutional investors and foreign investors from buying up our residential real estate. But what we also desperately need to do, and this is a bigger piece, the more important part of the puzzle, is to create more housing, build more housing. That is the primary reason why we have the housing crisis that we have. Now, yesterday, Trump wrote the following. For a very long time, buying and owning a home was considered the pinnacle of the American dream. Because of the record high inflation caused by Joe Biden and the Democrats in Congress, the American dream is increasingly out of touch for far too many people, especially younger Americans. I am immediately taking steps to ban large institutional investors from buying more single family homes, and I will be calling on Congress to codify it. He claimed that he's going to provide more details about this in 2 weeks. I am not going to celebrate this unless he actually carries it out. I think that Trump has made all sorts of promises that he did not make good on. And oftentimes when it appears like he's making good on his promises, there's always some sort of catch. So I'm in wait and see mode, but I do welcome this because if we're again in the middle of a housing shortage, how does it make sense to allow institutional investors to buy up these homes?
Yeah,
thus making it even more difficult for middle-class families. Go ahead, Cenk.
Look, I love the policy. Yeah, I just told you I love the policy that Trump proposed. It's in fact in our populist plank. And in fact, that's the one thing that Charlie Kirk and we agreed on that led to more and more conversation and finding out that we might have agreed on a couple more things as well. And so that's banning private equity or corporations from buying our homes. Populistplank.com, go check it out. And so if he meant it and he actually passed it, then I would give him a world of credit for that, okay? That would be him delivering on some of his populist promises. Maybe the first time he delivered on any populist promise, and I'd be thrilled. But Anna's absolutely right, no cookies until you actually do it. Because Trump does this a lot. Oh, I'm gonna do this, and then you never hear about it again. He said, oh, I'm gonna do lower drug prices, most favored nation status on all drugs for all Americans. Executive order, and then nothing. So, oh, he did one deal with Pfizer. I'm like, no, you gotta pass a bill. You have to pass a bill. Ro Khanna introduced that bill with a bunch of Republicans. Trump doesn't support it at all. So likely this is just a marketing trick to pretend to be populist. But again, if he passes it, I'll give him all the credit in the world. Okay, now you go to Ben Shapiro. Before he was a never Trumper, then Trump starts kissing Israel's ass and he's like, oh, Trump's the greatest. And they use him as a human shield and they hide behind him. You can't criticize us, we're on Trump's side. The minute Trump touches the rich and powerful, he's like, Trump's terrible. This is a terrible idea. What are you talking about? We definitely shouldn't do this. He doesn't care about Trump. He doesn't care about MAGA. He doesn't care about the right wing. All he cares about is protect his donors that fund the Daily Wire.
That's right. All right, we've got the revolution coming up next, Cenk. You want to give people a sneak peek?
Yep. So guys, two amazing interviews back to back for you guys. One is with a Muslim girl. She's a phenomenon here in America, and I can't wait to talk to her. And then the second one is with the director of a movie about the Palestinian experience that has won almost every award so far. It's an amazing movie and it tells a story from 1948 on. I don't want you to miss either one of those interviews. That's what's coming up next, so stay right here. We'll be right back. All right, welcome to the revolution, guys. We're trying to interview folks and talk to folks that are trying to make a difference in this country and change the way that folks think. We've talked to people from all sorts of different backgrounds. We talked to a conservative organization that's trying to stop the National Guard from getting deployed in places they shouldn't be deployed. I love that organization. And now we're going to talk to someone who's trying to make a difference by, in my opinion, and we'll talk to her about it, showing folks the real face of Muslims in America instead of the demagoguery that you see all the time. So I love it, and I'm happy to welcome her here. Amani Al-Khataba, she's a media founder and analyst. Her website is muslimgirl.com and is often known as the Muslim Girl. So Amani, welcome.
Hey, Cenk, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So I found out a stunning fact about you that I'm going to get to a little bit later, and it's the most important and interesting fact, but hold. I want everybody to know that you were selected as Forbes 30 under 30 in media for your work on muslimgirl.com. 25 most influential Muslim Americans by CNN. A little stunned by that. So before we get to talking with you, I want to show that clip from CNN as context for this conversation. So let's watch that.
MuslimGirl.com was born out of my frustration from feeling completely alienated by the misrepresentation of Muslim women in the media. And so being as pissed off as I was, I did what any millennial would do. I took it to the internet. My experience as a Muslim woman in today's America looks like me walking down the street with my huge headphones on, blaring Biggie Smalls, only to get interrupted along my day by someone on the street shouting, "Hey, are you a part of ISIS?"
Okay, so Amani, let's start from the beginning, given that context. When did you start this and what was your intent in starting the website?
I started Muslim Girl when I was a teenager, and it came out of the frustration of not seeing a reflection of myself and the world around me growing up here in the States, especially post 9/11. I'm a born and raised Jersey girl, so this is the only home I've ever had. And 9/11 happened at a very early age. I was early in elementary school, and all of a sudden it was like overnight I was being told by society that I don't belong here, that I'm enemy number one. And it began this coming of age experience where I was growing up under the weight of media propaganda, trying to shove down my throat what the Muslim identity represents to them. And being told that, Muslim women are oppressed, they're voiceless. By the time I was 9 years old, we were already in 2 wars in the Middle East, most of which was, under the pretense of liberating Muslim women from these brown men having to go in there and save them. And, history repeats itself. We're seeing the same thing happen today. But for me, that just was not my experience as an American Muslim girl. So I felt it was necessary to create a platform where we can kind of reclaim that narrative and talk back. And I started this mainly as a blog where I can share my real life experiences. And then over time, more and more Muslim women contributed their experiences. And now it's become a real-time chronicle of the evolution of the American Muslim identity, during one of the most influential times for our religious community in modern history.
So now that leads to the amazing fact. Which city in New Jersey did you grow up in?
East Brunswick.
Damn. Okay, so I'm from East Brunswick, New Jersey as well. So that is a wild coincidence.
I actually can't believe it. East Brunswick is such a small town that what is that kind of, alignment?
Yeah, that is amazing that happened.
That's so funny.
Yeah. There's a couple other folks that are in media from East Brunswick. Jesse Eisenberg, who was in a lot of movies.
I actually went to high school with his little sister, who was the ba-da-ba-ba-ba girl. So,
yeah. Look at that. Okay.
Yeah.
We got Josh Miller that went to the NFL, et cetera, et cetera. But that is amazing. That's amazing coincidence.
You're a Jersey boy, Cenk. Who knew?
Oh, for sure.
That explains so much.
Exactly. When you find out that I'm Turkish and from New Jersey, they go, oh, I get it. So
it's a double whammy.
Oh, for sure. That's how you get this aggressive. So, I mean, I talk about it all the time. The billboards in Jersey that say "Got hurt in Jersey.com."
Oh yeah,
that's Jersey life. So
I should add that to my website actually.
Yeah. So where's your family from originally?
My father is Jordanian and my mother is Palestinian. My mother's family is actually from a village called Deir Yassin, which has a lot of history. So my mom actually grew up here. I went to the same elementary school through high school as my mom, and my dad came here in the 80s, and they actually met here, and they had a little American immigrant love story.
Okay, all right, that's awesome. So, okay, let's talk about the evolution from when you were growing up, and I'll try to layer in my experience as well, right? When you were growing up to all the way to now, do you think that some people call it Islamophobia. I don't love that word. I think it's more just like hatred directed towards Muslims. Do you think that it's gotten worse, better, or has it gone up and down at different times?
It's definitely fluctuated, I would say. I think over the past 2 decades since 9/11, we've watched a lot of national Muslim organizations contribute a lot of resources, time, energy that were already scarce to really educating the American public and trying to convince Americans that we are just the same and to push back against these stereotypes that have alienated us. And because of those efforts, we saw, progress and improvement, but then all it takes is for, in my opinion, it was in 2016 or end of 2015 when Trump came on the scene and entered the presidential race and started introducing this idea of a Muslim ban for the first time, that it became apparent there has been a lot of anti-Muslim sentiment that was festering underneath the surface that wasn't necessarily healed. And because of that, we saw a surge in anti-Muslim hate crimes that rivaled and actually exceeded those of immediately post 9/11. Disproportionately targeting Muslim women wearing headscarves because obviously it's a visible marker, it's a walking target on our heads. And over time, we continue to see that fluctuation. I mean, right now, I think it's kind of been at an all-time high, unfortunately. We're kind of reduce, reuse, recycling all of the horrific propaganda talking points from post 9/11 for new political outcomes and new motives. So it's definitely a really bad time when it comes to anti-Muslim sentiment in this country.
So I'm not sure if you've seen this so far, but at the same time, Imani, I have a sense of hope I didn't have before. So the attacks on the Somali immigrants is terrible. And about 3 months ago or so, the propaganda against Muslims got put on hyperdrive. You started seeing a lot of the pro-Israel pundits just not just defend Israel, not just say attack Hamas, etc., but start to say it's the Muslims. Muslims are bad, etc. They hyped it up. But what's happened now is Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and now today Megyn Kelly, all saying, "Wait a minute, I think we might have gotten taught to hate Muslims so that we would help Israel attack their enemies." And after 9/11. The neocons, Israel First crowd wanted us to attack Iraq. Now they want us to attack Iran. And every time they want us to attack one of their neighbors, massive anti-Muslim propaganda pops up all over television, all over media, and from our politicians. But the fact that some of the leading figures in the right have now recognized that and called that out, I haven't seen anything that encouraging in a long time. And I was curious what your take on that is.
You're absolutely right. This is the first time in American history where the pro-Palestine human rights movement has become bipartisan. We've never seen that before. Usually it's been historically the pro-Israel sentiment that's been bipartisan. And we have sought the little empathy we were able to garner from the Democratic Party. But I think now, especially with the rise of the America First movement, people are recognizing, rightfully so, that Americans are being put on the back burner for the interests of foreign allies. And I think because of social media being so easily accessible, people are really seeing with their own eyes what their tax dollars are going to committing on the other side of the world, when we ourselves are not even accessing the type of privileges that we should be getting as Americans. So I think that it's because of that nationalistic sentiment that we're seeing that change happen. But that is also coupled with, I think, a lot of humanitarianism as well. I think there's the bottom line is that people do not like genocide and they don't want to see it committed on their watch. So that coupled with this political prism within our bipartisan system, seeing that really come to life in this new way where people are talking about Palestine for the first time, it's become a central point in the elections. I just saw that in California, they were asking all of these candidates, like, do you believe that what's happening in Palestine is a genocide? And I can tell you, growing up as a Palestinian girl in New Jersey, I personally never imagined seeing this happen in my lifetime. That's how significant of a contrast it is and how sharp of a change it's been. Because when I was a kid, saying that you're a Palestinian was the equivalent of saying that you're a terrorist. That was all that Americans understood about it. And now it's so much more nuanced in that conversation.
Yeah, 100%. I want to get back to that left that you're talking about and the independence in a second, because you're absolutely right, a mountain of difference, right? But one last thing on the right. So when I go to Muslim events these days, people are honestly gushing about Tucker Carlson, and because he's the one out there saying, I think we were lied to. I think that the Muslims are human beings and we shouldn't kill them, and that we shouldn't discriminate based on anybody's religion, etc. And people can't believe it. They can't believe that Tucker Carlson is saying that and defending Muslims. So, but I'm curious if that's just my experience, or are you seeing that in your community as well?
I've definitely been seeing that. Absolutely. I think for a lot of American Muslims, especially over the past 2 years, one of the most pressing issues for us, as well as for many Americans from different backgrounds, has been what's going on in Palestine. And so when an underrepresented and marginalized minority like American Muslims see major figureheads like Tucker Carlson actually speak about them in a way that defines them as human beings, as equals, it is such a breath of fresh air that it's garnered so much support and attention. I mean, I've also seen that kind of support happen for Candace Owens, for Nick Fuentes. I don't necessarily think it's a good thing in the long run, because these are people that have expressed that they see minorities and other communities as being inferior in many ways. So it can easily come back to bite such communities in the long run. But I think that for American Muslims, they're learning how to play politics, and they understand that you have to make allies where you can find them when it comes to really pushing the needle forward within this political game, this political system that is rigged against us. So I think that is in large part why a lot of people are moved by voices like Tucker Carlson and feel represented by them now.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between those four people, right? So Fuentes is generally, spoken out against every kind of race and religion and background in different ways. Although he does point out, yeah, we were propagandized about Muslims in particular, right? And I love what Candace says about Muslims. I don't love what she says about Jews, right? I think the whole conversation about Talmudic Jews and all that stuff is nonsense, right? So, and we can make that distinction, and there's nothing wrong with making that. Whereas Tucker and Megyn are way more mainstream, and they've never said anything against Jewish people. They're just saying, sorry, but it looks like Israel's profiting from this anti-Muslim propaganda, and we're gonna point it out. And that is an amazing development. Look, and I'm gonna go to the left in a sec, but my sense of it is, if Tucker ran against a standard corporate robot Democrat like Kamala Harris, he'd get like 80, 90% of the Muslim American vote. That's my sense of it.
Oh, 1000%, for sure.
Yeah, okay, now we don't have to run Kamala Harris if you're on the left and if you're a Democrat. And now let me give flowers to the left, right? The first politician I have ever seen that spoke about Palestinians as human beings was Bernie Sanders. And when I remember Bernie in a debate back in 2016, speaking about Palestinians like they were human, and I'd never seen that on American television. And I was like, wow, I love this brother. I love this brother. So he was first, and he's been great on this throughout. But what I wanted to talk about with you is now we're seeing so many allies to the point where, as you were pointing out, it's almost become a reverse litmus test for Democratic candidates. Before, the litmus test was, do you bow to Israel? And if you don't bow 200% and lie down on the ground and grovel, then you're an anti-Semite, and you're canceled, and you have no chance of winning, etc. Right? Now, people are getting asked, do you work for Israel? Right? Are you taking Israeli lobby money, and are you serving Israel or America? And it feels like it's becoming a reverse litmus test. That's awesome, because Amani, I don't know anyone, any group in America that is for American sovereignty more than Muslim Americans, because we feel the weight of a different government affecting us so much here in this country that we would love for America to be sovereign and free. Do you get that same sense that I'm getting from the left and independence and overall as the zeitgeist of America in politics?
Of course, that's exactly what we're witnessing happening right now. And what's entertaining about this political shift is that Israel and its allies are really shooting themselves in the foot, because the more that the power is shifting, the harder they're pulling all the levers that they have in order to hold on to whatever influence that they can. And it's become so obvious to people. And the American public resents that. I think in a lot of ways, the Israeli government is trying to control the American people. And that is so anti-American. And obviously, like you said, American Muslims, this is very clear to us because we're directly impacted by it. But we are witnessing an American awakening right now, an American renaissance, where the biggest gem of American culture is free speech. It's our First Amendment. And to watch a foreign government literally attack one of the most important tenets of American culture in order to pursue their own political interests on our dime, for that matter, that is really rubbing people the wrong way. And you don't have to be a Republican, you don't have to be a Democrat to understand that or feel that way. I think that is something that's been unifying everybody over the past 2 years.
Yeah, it feels like Americans are beginning to feel like Palestinians. They're beginning to feel like what an occupation does to you, right? And how
America is absolutely occupied. I think a lot of people are realizing that America is under an Israeli occupation right now. You know, where we are having our media being owned by Israeli interests. We are witnessing our Ivy League system be gutted in order to stop protests from happening. We are arresting and deporting our own citizens that are outright criticizing Israel. And for that reason, I think it's just we're watching the downfall of what has been historically this unquestionable American-Israeli alliance. And all that Israel can really rely on right now is the system. I always call it like when finally Israel is really taking over the host body, right? And that's what we're witnessing taking place. And we have to start removing that influence one by one. And I think that's the precipice that we're on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. One more political thing here. Look, and we're not rose-colored glasses here. We also see the huge anti-Muslim propaganda and it working in a lot of ways, right? The attacks against Somali Americans and pretending like they're we found the fraud, the one people doing fraud in America. Are you kidding me? Look at the Pentagon, look at oil companies and defense contractors, etc. But the other encouraging trend, though, at the same time, we've got all the negatives, but for the first time we have all these positives, right? Before we just had the negatives and none of the positives. The last positive is young Jewish Americans coming to our side and saying this isn't about race or ethnicity or religion. This is about right and wrong. and we were taught never again, and this is a genocide. And so, and now we're seeing, and we've covered it a bunch of times on the Young Turks, whether it's in videos or now they're writing articles about it, where older Jewish Americans are going, where did we go wrong? And it's amazing because they're saying, in essence, in my opinion, we taught our kids to be too moral. Like they're supposed to just favor Israel. They're not supposed to care about morality. Sorry, like you accidentally did a good job and you raised moral kids. And so are you encouraged by, younger Jewish Americans being so much more open-minded about this issue?
We've always had young Jewish Americans in our corner. It's just now becoming so many more because a lot of them are waking up and undoing a lot of this pro-genocide brainwashing that they've been indoctrinated into from a very early age. But absolutely, I mean, I was at the protests at Columbia University when they were taking place, and I witnessed with my own eyes those protests being led by the Jewish students, and the Jewish students being the biggest allies of enforcing a safe space for Muslim students and for students from other underrepresented and marginalized backgrounds. But it is really disappointing to watch just the way that they have to deal with so much hate and attack and doxing from their own community because of the fact that they, dare to stand with the human rights of another people. But it is something that gives me a lot of hope. It is something that makes me really excited for the future. The thing that a lot of people really have to understand, especially about Israeli society, is that it is this machine that pumps out this genocidal mentality. That's the only way that this genocide against Palestinians in Gaza has been possible, is from birth. They are really taught and indoctrinated into this ideology that Palestinians are not human beings and we have to kill them before they kill us. And they're pretty much all like roaches that we have to get rid of. And it's really hard to break out of that. But that's the only way that you can watch this level of violence that surpasses the human imagination being committed in real time right before our eyes. And so we really need more Jewish people, especially Jewish Americans, because of the fact that Americans are so influential, to be at the forefront of denouncing that. And one question that always struck me is, after 9/11 happened, I grew up my entire life watching Muslims, anytime there's a terrorist attack and Muslims are being blamed for it, around the world, Muslims immediately jump to denouncing that violence, to distancing the Islamic faith from that violence, saying that it does not represent us, we're not a homogenous group. And I struggle to understand why more Jewish Americans don't feel that same compulsion to distance themselves from genocide and to denounce genocide and say that this does not represent our Jewish faith. And watching that happen, I mean, there is absolutely a rise in anti-Semitism that's indisputable. And a lot of it is because of the fact that we're watching this collusion between the Israeli government's political interests and the Jewish faith and using that as a cover. So I really hope that more Jewish Americans just rise up to being able to be vocal and to denounce this kind of violence that's being committed in their name, and really being those catalytic agents of change for our society in order for us to progress forward.
Yeah, Israel does the most amount of propaganda, actually, not to Americans in general, not even against Muslims. The number one propaganda they do is for Jewish Americans, saying, you're all gonna die if you don't support Israel. The whole world hates us and they're gonna kill us all. They're gonna kill us all, they're gonna kill us all, they're gonna kill us all. You have to kill them before they kill us. And they've got them believing that these Palestinians who have nothing left, who have lived literally in rubble in Gaza, are somehow the Nazis. No, they're the powerless. They're now living in camps, right? Okay, but we've talked about that enough. Now, before we go, tell me, Imani, about reactions you're getting. So when people see you and you don't necessarily fit what they had in their mind for what a Muslim woman is like, what are some of the reactions you get?
It differs. I think for myself personally, I've gotten hate across the board. I've gotten hate from super conservative Americans that say, oh, you're only this outspoken and empowered because you grew up in America or in the West. And then there are some, super strict Muslims that claim that we're reinventing Islam and that, how strong women like me don't have a place within the faith and things like that, which is obviously not true. But for the most part, I think that, showing that I am a product of American culture. That's not something that you can strip away from me. It's literally intertwined into who I am. It really builds a bridge for people to be able to understand the Islamic faith better. It creates this accessible and unintimidating gateway for them to ask the questions that they need to ask, or to really undermine some of the stereotypes they might have about who Muslim women are. And the fact is, you can't put us in a box. Muslim women come from every single walk of life on the planet, every single lived experience, every single background, speak every language that you can think of. And it's just impossible to give a profile to who a Muslim woman is. And that's really the reason why we started Muslim Girls, to show the reflection of all of the different types of women that make up who we are. And it's really important for us to do that, because the first step towards genocide being possible is to categorize an entire group of people into one homogenous group, to put a label on them. That's how you can begin to dehumanize them. So when we take away from that, when we show that we're made up of individuals with our own wills, with our own choices, our own decisions in life, that really helps to not only change people's perception about Muslim women, but also just change the dynamic entirely of the way that we connect with one another.
100%. And what a lot of folks in America don't know, and I don't blame them for not knowing, they never got taught it, right? Is that there is no one Muslim culture. They were taught that there is one Muslim culture and it's like this radical, fundamentalist, extremist, etc. No, that's nonsense. No, there's Nigerian Muslims, Indonesian Muslims, Egyptian Muslims, let alone German, American, etc., etc. And Nigerian, Indonesian, and Egyptian cultures, and let alone Bangladesh, etc. They're all so different, so different. And
Cenk, I know that you grew up spending your weekends at East Brunswick Mall, just like I did, and out at the strip malls, eating the best pizza and bagels. And you're absolutely right. And not just in terms of racial background, but also in terms of just cultural upbringing. For us, my generation that's born and raised in the States, we have our own Muslim culture as well. And the next generation that comes after me is gonna have their own culture too. And it's just an ongoing evolution. And there's no reason for us to focus on our differences when we have this beautiful mosaic that's bringing us all together.
Amani, last thing, MuslimGirl.com. It's not just politics. What else is on there?
You got everything. You got lifestyle, fashion, beauty, culture, current events. But really, Muslim Girl doesn't tell you what Islam should be or how it's practiced. It tells you how it's experienced by the Muslim woman and the thousands of voices that make it up, the millions of readers that we have around the world that interact with our content. So really, it's a place to promote tolerance through the spirit of sisterhood. And I'm really proud that over half of our audience comes from non-Muslim backgrounds, women from diverse communities that find it as a gateway for us to come closer to one another, understand one another better, and to be our sister's keeper.
Yeah. So everybody check out MuslimGirl.com. Then I'm just gonna leave you with this. To the point about how varied Muslims are across the world. Most Muslims do not look like me or Amani. The top 5 Muslim countries are Indonesia, Nigeria, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. So you're getting a totally different perspective here in America. And why do you only see mainly Arabs as Muslims when it's actually a minority of Muslims? Is because they happen to be Israel's neighbors, right? And so that's why.
Bingo.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right. Amani, you're awesome. Thank you for joining us. Like I said, everybody check out MuslimGirl.com.
Thanks so much, Cenk.
Thank you. All right, everybody stay here. We've got another interview for you guys. A new movie's out about Palestinians, and it is amazing, and it's winning like every award there is. We're gonna talk to the director. You don't wanna miss that. We'll be right back.
here to tell you how it started.
انزل على انزل على نفديك يا فلسطين.
شو فايدتنا كأهل إذا مش قادرين نحمي أولاد؟ No one ever thought any of this would happen.
So what you just saw there is All That's Left of You, one of the hottest movies of the year. It's coming out tomorrow. It premiered at Sundance Film Festival, which is extraordinarily difficult. It was an entry for Best International Feature Film at the 98th Academy Awards, or it is. It won nominated for Best International Feature at the 2026 Film Independent Spirit Awards. And we're really lucky to have the writer, director, and producer of that movie, Cherien Dabis, with us right now. Cherien, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. Thrilled to have you here. Tell us what the essence of the movie is first, and then we'll dive into the details.
Well, the film is an intergenerational epic that follows the sort of traces the story of love and loss across 3 generations of one Palestinian family. It's sweeping in scope in that it covers, many decades, more than 7 decades. From 1948 until almost the present day, but it's also quite a personal, intimate story as well that really dives deep into the lives of these characters and how they're impacted by, all of these political events.
So it obviously 1948 is a huge part of that. And Cherien, here in America, we're kind of taught that Israel just popped up and the whole world wanted Israel to happen. That's why the United Nations voted for it. And the Palestinians basically went for a picnic and just never came back. But that's not what happened at all, right? So
that's right.
What happened in 1948?
Well, as you know, there was a lot leading up to it, but essentially 1948 is the year that more than 750,000 Palestinians were dispossessed, ethnically cleansed from Palestine. There was this myth that Palestine was a land without a people for a people without a land, and that was absolutely untrue. Palestinians had been living there for centuries and had a very robust, lives there. In the movie we depict Jaffa in 1948, which was the center of Palestinian cultural and economic life. The citrus groves were a kind of booming a trade there, and you see, in the family, the sort of main character in 1948 is a father who owns, orange groves. And so it's really the first time that we see a story about the Nakba, and for me, I don't think that you can make a movie about the Nakba without really making telling a kind of multi-generational story, because the Nakba never ended. What happened in 1948, this ethnic cleansing that began in 48, has never really ended. It has only escalated and escalated over the decades until it has become, what we see today, which is an ongoing genocide.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, the Nakba is a word that means the catastrophe. And that's what happened to Palestinians when Israel was formed. And Cherien, I was taught in high school in America that phrase that you just mentioned. Zionism was beautiful and amazing because it took a people without a land to a land without a people. And I was like, wait a minute, then how about the 750,000 people that left? If the land didn't have any people, then who were the 750,000? Right?
Right, and they were in many cases, forcibly expelled. There were many massacres at the time. I believe it's more than 500 Arab villages were destroyed. I mean, there's all of these events that took place in those years, leading up to 1948 and then post 1948. That were absolutely just catastrophic for Palestinians. And that's what we're referring to when we say the Nakba. And that was, 1948 is what we call the year of the Nakba, and it is really truly never ended.
Yeah, and you see it now in Gaza, of course. And Israel has taken 53% of Gaza. and they take more and more of it every day. They keep expanding the yellow line. They're never going to give it back. And they say, and they voted on this. They said, we're never going to allow Palestine to be a state. So, I mean, it's the world's biggest hypocrisy. It's saying, they cry all the time, oh, they don't want Israel to exist. And then they say, oh, but we literally will not allow Palestine to exist. No.
Right, nor will they really allow Palestinians to exist. I mean, they don't allow our history to exist. The history that you and I are talking about right now is actually actively denied to this day. This is a history that is omitted from history books. Daily we see headlines that are, not telling the whole truth, if they're even telling the truth at all. So yeah, there's a lot of active denial, censorship, erasure of Palestine and Palestinians that continues.
Yeah, so I want to talk about what's happening today. I want to talk about the movie, but last thing on this. Look, guys, if you're wondering out there, you're not Palestinian, you're not Israeli, you're like, I don't know, one side says this, the other side says that, how do I know what's right? Well, first of all, everyone agrees 750,000 people were expelled, right? So then, but the Israelis say, oh, they left voluntarily.
Right.
And there was no violence. They all just decided my ancestral home, the home I live in physically right now with my family and all my belongings and my farmland, etc. I'll just leave it behind for no reason at all. I'll just leave. And the Palestinians say, no, we left because we were scared to death for our lives because we just saw them slaughter the Palestinian village next door to us. What do you think is more likely to be correct? Come on. Like, that's not close. Anyone with any degree of logic knows which side is correct and which side isn't. And that's why it's so frustrating that American media has lied to the American people my entire life. So that leads to my question, Cherien. You got Mark Ruffalo and Javier Bardem as executive producers of this movie. This movie, if you had put this out 20 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, it would have been shunned. It probably would have been called anti-Semitic. It would have been this, that, and the other thing. But now you have some of the biggest stars in Hollywood saying, no, I'm gonna actively produce this movie and it's getting all of these accolades. It feels like the tide has begun to turn, but you have a better perspective than I do on this. Are you seeing a little bit different world these days in the West and America?
I think so, yeah. I mean, funny enough, I've been feeling the tide turning for a little while. As a Palestinian American, I've grown up just kind of obsessed with the media landscape, knowing from a young age that we were being actively dehumanized and, that the media was perpetuating dangerous stereotypes of us. And my family, experienced great racism because of that, like really horrific racism. And so I've been really watching the media landscape from the time that I was a kid. And I would say, Gaza's been bombarded, as you know, many, many times. And people have a way of forgetting how many times we've bombed Gaza and have just murdered, tens of thousands of people over the course of all of these years. 2021, I felt a very big shift. And I had started writing the script in 2020. So I started thinking about the story as early as 2014, once again, when Gaza was being bombarded. So in a funny way, this script came, years before the current events. But I started to feel like the tide is turning and I want to do something that can help be part of that turning tide. Of course, I had no way of knowing, where we would end up and how quickly things would take such a horrific turn and that we would watch one of the most painful chapters of Palestinian history unfold as we were shooting this film.
So again, in the past, I feel like if you had written this same exact script and you took it to folks, it probably would not have been made. So tell me about what happened in this case that led to it being made and now receiving these accolades.
Well, interestingly enough, I really took my time developing this, and I didn't take it out into the world until I felt, I felt that the script was ready. I took it out in 2021 actually, and this was one of those moments where I felt like it feels, this feels different. People are really talking about the bombardment of Gaza right now. People seem concerned. Even people in Hollywood who I never expected to kind of reach out and ask me if I was okay because of what was happening were reaching out and asking me if I was okay because of what was happening. And this really moved me. Like I felt seen for the first time as a Palestinian, and I think that you're absolutely right. Had I taken this out years before, I don't know, I think people would have been way too scared. I think in 2021, I took it to just a very small handful of American companies, and I got very quick passes. So, this film was not financed in any kind of a traditional way. I partnered with European producers. I found financing in Europe and the Arab world. I knew even in 2021 that there was no way that I was going to get financing in Hollywood for this film. And even today, I mean, there's just no way that you would get financing in Hollywood for a film like this, or really any Palestinian film. It just wouldn't happen. Even despite all of the shifts and the kind of changing tide, and the fact that humanity is waking up, and the fact that, you have Mark Ruffalo and Javier Bardem and many, many other Hollywood, powerhouses speaking out. I think that you still wouldn't, a script like this in Hollywood would not get made.
Yeah, but the tides are changing, and they're changing right in front of our eyes. And so, tell us about the family that's the center of this movie. Give us a little bit of sense of what happens to them.
Well, like I mentioned, we follow one family over 3 generations. And so you really kind of follow grandfather, father, and son. And so the film opens with a protest in Palestine, and really a moment of violence that rocks this family. And there's a teenage boy at a protest, and he's the one that experiences this moment of violence. And before we ever really find out what happens to him, or whether, like, how badly he was hurt, we cut to the face of an old woman who looks straight into the camera and sets up the story, and essentially says, I'm gonna tell you the story of my son, but to tell you his story, I have to start with the story of his grandfather. And the reason I set up the story that way was because, for decades, we've been watching Palestinians protest. We've been watching teenage boys throw rocks and put themselves in harm's way, and stare down the barrels of M16s. But we've never really gotten to see who these boys are, who these young men are. We've never really understood the army is invading their refugee camp. We've never really gotten to see how their families ended up in the refugee camp to begin with. And so through this opening and this moment of violence that this teenage boy experiences, the mother takes us back in time to tell the family story, and essentially tell the story of how the family ended up in the refugee camp to begin with, and how this teenage boy really became who he is. Why he's so fervently, chanting for a free Palestine at this protest, so that we really come to understand what this family has been through in order to kind of get to this moment of violence. And then, we catch up with the moment of violence about 2/3 of the way through the film, and we find out what happens to this teenager. So it's really, you follow grandfather, father, and son. You really get to be with this family in order to understand the impact of all of these events on them. And that was really my interest here, was how can I tell the story of how we have been impacted by political events, not the story of the political events. That's the background. Really, what is the foreground of this film is that intimate family story, where you really come to understand the emotional experience of all of this devastation on people.
Yeah, there's that old quote from Stalin, and I'll paraphrase it here. You kill one person, it's murder. You kill 100,000 people, it's a statistic. And so that's why I think movies are so important, because it humanizes those statistics. It's one thing to hear that 20,000 Palestinian children have been killed in Gaza. in just this last round, right? It's another thing to see a family and get emotionally attached to them, and then see what happens to them. So that's why I think movies are so important, and there have not been a lot of Palestinian voices that have been, able to allowed to make movies, and so we've seen the opposite point of view in media about 200% of the time. So that's why I think your movie is so important. But let me ask you one last question about it. So a lot of people will see it and wonder, is it a real family, or is it an amalgamation of the stories that you know from several different families?
Well, at the beginning of the film, I say that it's based on historical fact. So, the background, the kind of macro political events of the film are all historical. But the family at the center of the film is fictional, though they are inspired by my own family, and specifically my dad and my dad's side of the family. My dad was exiled from Palestine in 1967. And much like the characters in the film, he had to get foreign citizenship just to return to visit his family and the only home he'd ever known. And as a kid, I went back with him. We all went back as a family to visit his family in Palestine, and I saw him harassed and humiliated at borders and checkpoints. And so there's definitely the parts of the story that came from my own experience, kind of visiting Palestine and seeing the things that I saw. And also just witnessing my dad's heartache over his exile, over the deteriorating situation in his homeland, seeing the different generations of my family, from my grandfather to my father to my siblings and I, and how our identities were formed by what was happening in Palestine. And also by, kind of by each other. Our identities were formed in relationship or in opposition to each other. I saw my dad become more and more disillusioned. I saw him become angrier and angrier. I saw his health suffer because of how angry he was and how devastated he was over the, just the deteriorating situation. And I wanted to find a different way. And I think I could say, I saw him looking to the past, and so I started looking to the future and thinking, what can I do? How can I be helpful? I need to tell our stories. And that's, one of the reasons why I wanted to become a storyteller, is sort of to take action and say, like, okay, how can I channel this trauma into something that could be of use and that could try to, move the needle in some way on Palestine?
Cherien, you mentioned a word there I gotta ask about. And I think it's probably the most underrated part of the evil of this occupation, which is humiliation. So we see the death, we see the injuries, we see the human rights abuses, etc. But I think what doesn't come through enough about an occupation like this is the daily humiliation. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much to occupation that I think people don't know about. This is occupation just sounds like a very benign term. But it's something that is so brutally violent, and there's different kinds of violence under occupation. And humiliation is one of those kinds of violence. It's a psychological, emotional type of violence that is meant to really break people. And Palestinians suffer it every single day. It's part of what the more than 500, or I think it's up to 700 checkpoints within the West Bank alone. You're constantly meant to wait. You're constantly meant to be, inconvenienced in the most, horrible of ways. And that's the kind of that's the sort of lighter part of the occupation. But when this is happening on a daily basis, when you're being stopped and interrogated and then meant to do things just to embarrass you in front of others, just for the whim of, young soldiers who are having a good time, which is something we see often. It's really meant to break you. I think that, there's one of the things I wanted to do in this film is show the different kinds of violence. There's the physical violence, but then there's the psychological, and then there's also the administrative violence, which you also see in the film, where families are unable to get the medical attention that they need. They're not able to get permits to travel to where they need to go. They're separated from their families. They're separated from their land. They're separated from their schools. This is a type of violence. And I think, it's so much more than just physical, and those are the different kinds of things I wanted to show in this film in order to show really kind of the brutality of occupation.
Yeah, I mean, I had a Palestinian family tell me a story about they're going on a trip. They've got their stuff with them. Israeli IDF comes by, takes out all of their belongings that they were going on the trip with, throws them all over the road, picks out the 7-year-old Palestinian girl in the family and says, now clean it all up, right? Why? Because they can. And we've all seen the videos of them marching out Palestinian men in their underwear in the middle of town just to humiliate them. It's just disgusting, and it's part of the dehumanization. Okay, but again, the movie's doing great. So last question is, what's your top hope for what we get out of this movie?
You know, I didn't make a violent film. I didn't want to make a violent film. There are moments of violence in the film, and they're not all physical violence. You know, I was just mentioning the many different kinds of violence that Palestinians experience under occupation. And so there are these very carefully chosen moments of violence throughout the film. And the reason they're there is in order for us to see the consequences of that violence. And in order for us to really understand, you know, again, how people are impacted by all of this. And you know, what is the reason, the purpose of this oppressive, you know, horrifically oppressive apartheid system in so many ways is to break us down. You know, and the movie really looks at Palestinian men and the way Palestinian men are particularly brutalized. And I really think the system is meant to just break us down. And what I really wanted to do with this film is really show the extraordinary will and love that it takes to survive this kind of violence, to you know, to even to transcend it, to try to really just like, you know, figure out how do I feel this pain and therefore not bottle it up and feel rage and hatred in my heart. And ultimately, you know, what's left of any of us at the end of the day when we've survived anything horrific is love. You know, that's what keeps us going. That's what keeps us here. And I think for me, the movie is meant to remind us of that. Like at the end of the day, like all we have is our love. And I really want people to take that away from this film. You know, the fact that that's how we get through this.
Yep. All right, Cherien Dabis, the writer, director, and producer of All That's Left of You, that is on the Oscar shortlist for Best International Feature Film. Hopefully the next time we see Cherien, she's accepting an Academy Award. Thank you so much for joining us, inshallah.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, really appreciate it. All right, guys, wonderful day. That's all we got for you today. Much love, we'll see you tomorrow.